Have you ever woken from a dream? Your heart still pounding. The images, so vivid, so intensely real that they linger with you long after the morning light has filled your room. You find yourself going about your day, yet a part of your mind remains tethered to that strange, nocturnal world, haunted by a feeling that the dream held a message, a secret whispered from a part of yourself you rarely get to meet. We have all been there, standing on the shore of our own subconscious, watching the waves of a dream recede, leaving behind peculiar shells and symbols we don't know how to read. In our modern world, we are often told that dreams are just random neurological firings, the brain's way of cleaning house while we sleep, meaningless static to be dismissed. Or worse, we turn to generic dream dictionaries, flimsy guidebooks that tell us a snake is always a bad omen, or that losing teeth means we are anxious about our appearance. But this approach feels hollow, because it misses the most fundamental truth, that your dream is yours alone, woven from the unique threads of your life, your fears, your hopes, and your deepest, unspoken truths. What if those dreams were not random noise at all? What if they were a forgotten language, the native tongue of your soul? This is the world we are about to enter, guided by the pioneering work of Carl Jung, a man who was not just a psychologist, but a courageous explorer of the inner cosmos. Jung believed that dreams are not trying to hide things from us, but are in fact a natural, honest expression of our inner reality, a loving hand reaching out from the depths of our being to guide us toward balance and wholeness. This is an invitation to a journey, an expedition into the landscape of your own mind. We will learn to look at our dreams not as riddles to be solved, but as conversations to be had. We will discover that within these nightly dramas, we can find the keys to unlock our own potential, to heal old wounds, and to understand the profound messages the universe is constantly sending us, not from distant stars, but from the sacred, mysterious depths of our own soul. This journey is about more than just understanding dreams. It is about understanding yourself, and in doing so, reclaiming the power to create a life of meaning, purpose, and authentic prosperity. Before we learn to read the map of our inner world, we must first remember that it exists, and that it speaks a language that is far older than any written word, a tongue our modern world has tragically forgotten. Imagine for a moment two different people, separated by thousands of years. The first is a young hunter in an ancient tribe, waking with the dawn, his mind still filled with the image of a luminous white stag that led him to a hidden spring in his dream. He doesn't dismiss it. He rises and goes to the village elder, the shaman, who listens with solemn attention. For the tribe understands that this dream is not just the hunter's own. It is a message for the people, a sacred guidance from the Great Spirit, pointing the way to water, to life, to a deeper truth. The dream is honored, discussed, and its wisdom is integrated into the life of the community. Now, picture a modern office worker in a bustling city. She wakes from a dream of a strange, beautiful bird with iridescent feathers, singing a song she has never heard before. Perched on her windowsill, the dream feels significant, magical even. But then her alarm clock blares. Her phone buzzes with notifications, emails, deadlines. The memory of the bird fades like mist, dismissed as a silly, random image, a fleeting piece of mental clutter to be swept away by the urgent demands of the real world. Within an hour, the bird and its song are gone, forgotten. This is the chasm we live in, the great forgetting sign. We have been taught to devalue this inner language, to treat it as primitive or nonsensical. And in the early days of psychology, even the great Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, approached dreams with a degree of suspicion. His work was revolutionary, a monumental step that forced the Western world to take the inner life seriously for the first time. Freud insisted that dreams were not random, that they held profound meaning. For him, they were the royal road to the unconscious. But it was a road that was heavily guarded. He believed the primary function of a dream was to be a form of wish fulfillment, a stage where our most primal, socially unacceptable desires, primarily of a sexual or aggressive nature, could be acted out in a disguised form to preserve our sleep. He proposed a censor, a kind of internal moral guardian that takes these forbidden wishes and scrambles them, distorts them into the bizarre and illogical narratives we experience as dreams. So, for Freud, dreaming of a key fitting into a lock wasn't really about a key in a lock. It was a disguised symbol for sexual intercourse. A dream of climbing a staircase wasn't about ambition, but was another veiled representation of the sexual act. The dream's true meaning, its latent content, was something ugly and primitive that had to be hidden from our conscious mind behind a mask of manifest content. The dream's purpose, in this view, was fundamentally to conceal, to deceive. The analyst's job was to be a detective, to decode the lies and expose the hidden, shameful truth. And this is where Carl Jung, once Freud's chosen heir, made his revolutionary break. While respecting Freud's pioneering work, Jung felt this view was too limited, too negative, and ultimately, a disservice to the profound wisdom of the psyche. He looked at dreams and saw something entirely different. He did not see a censor trying to hide the truth. He saw the psyche trying, with all its might, to reveal it. Jung proposed that the dream's primary function is not wish fulfillment, but compensation. It is nature's own balancing act. Think of your conscious mind, your ego, as the captain of a ship, steering through the day. To do so, the captain must be focused, making clear decisions, often adopting a one-sided attitude. Perhaps your job requires you to be relentlessly logical and analytical, pushing all emotion aside. Perhaps your life circumstances have forced you to be overly accommodating, always saying yes to others while suppressing your own needs. Our conscious minds, by necessity, become unbalanced. We overdevelop one side of our personality at the expense of another. Then, at night, when the captain of the ego sleeps, the rest of the crew, the entire ship's company, from the deepest parts of the hold, comes out to have its say. This is the dream. The dream is the compensatory voice. If you have been too logical, your dream might be filled with wild, irrational magic. If you have been too timid, you might dream of being a courageous warrior. If you have been consumed by worldly success, you might dream of a simple, beautiful, natural landscape that reminds you of a forgotten peace. The dream is not hiding a secret desire to be a magician or a warrior. It is presenting you with the other side of the coin. It is saying, look, here is this part of you that you have neglected. Here is the emotion you have suppressed. Here is the strength you have forgotten you possess. Please pay attention, for you need this to be whole. Jung saw the psyche as a self-regulating system, always striving for balance, for homeostasis. A dream is like a letter from the Internal Bureau of Standards, informing you of a current imbalance and suggesting a correction. It is fundamentally honest. Its purpose is not to deceive, but to make whole. The dream is not hiding from you. It is speaking to you, in its own native tongue, the language of symbols and metaphors. It simply asks that we learn to listen. So, why have we become deaf to this language? Why did the modern worker forget the iridescent bird? It is because our society has come to worship one-sidedness. We have been taught that what is logical, measurable, and rational is real, and what is intuitive, symbolic, and mysterious is suspect. We live in a world of data, not a world of meaning. We are told to trust our heads, but not our hearts. And certainly not our guts. We have silenced the poet, the mystic, and the shaman within us. And in doing so, we have cut ourselves off from a vast source of wisdom, guidance, and healing. This is not without consequence. The epidemic of anxiety, depression, and the pervasive sense of meaninglessness in our modern world is the cry of a soul that is not being listened to. It is the result of living a life that is dangerously out of balance. A life where the conscious ego has become a tyrant, refusing to listen to the counsel of its own deeper self. Therefore, learning to understand our dreams is not a mere hobby. It is a revolutionary act of self-reclamation. It is choosing to believe that you are more than just your conscious mind, more than your job title, more than the roles you play. It is a declaration that there is a deep, intelligent, and benevolent force within you that is actively working toward your own healing and evolution. The dream is the bridge that connects your conscious ego to this vast, wise, and ancient part of yourself. It doesn't conceal. It reveals. It doesn't lie. It compensates. It doesn't lead you astray. It leads you home, to the ultimate goal of a life that is not perfect, but is gloriously, authentically, and completely whole. Before we can meet the many characters that live within us, we must first understand the landscape they inhabit. The personal territory of memory and experience that Jung called the personal unconscious. If the dream is a letter from the depths of your being, we must now ask, from where exactly is it sent? Jung's first great map of the inner world begins with a territory he called the personal unconscious. Imagine that your mind, your psyche, is a house, the main floor, well lit and tidy, is your conscious awareness, your ego. This is the room where you live your daily life, the part of you that identifies as me. It's where you make decisions, interact with the world, and present yourself to others. But every house has a basement, a cellar just beneath the floorboards. This is the personal unconscious. It is not a frightening or evil place in itself. It is simply a storage room. Into this cellar, we place everything that the conscious mind doesn't need at the moment: a forgotten phone number, the name of a childhood friend, what you had for breakfast last Tuesday. It holds all the memories and experiences that are not currently in the spotlight of our attention. But we also use this basement for another purpose. It is where we throw the things we don't want to look at, the things that don't fit with the clean, respectable image of the main floor. It's where we shove our frustrations, our griefs, our insecurities, and our disallowed desires. Over time, these rejected pieces of ourselves don't simply vanish. They begin to coalesce in the dark, forming a kind of living entity, an alternate personality made of everything we have denied. This is what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is our hidden self, our inner tween, born from the moment we first learned that certain parts of us were unacceptable. As a child, you may have been told that good children are always quiet. So your natural, boisterous energy was exiled to the cellar. You may have been taught that anger is a sin. So your righteous indignation was locked away. You learned from your family, your school, and your society that to be loved and accepted, you had to be kind. Not selfish, brave. Not cowardly, generous. Not greedy. We create a good version of ourselves to show the world. And everything that doesn't fit this idealized image is relegated to the darkness of the unconscious, forming the shadow. It is crucial to understand that the shadow is not inherently evil. It is simply what is unknown to us, what we have chosen not to know. And because we have rejected these parts, they have not had a chance to mature. The anger we suppressed at age 5 remains a 5-year-old's tantrum in our cellar. The vulnerability we denied as a teenager remains a teenager's raw insecurity. So how do we meet this hidden self? Most often, our first encounter is in our dreams. The shadow almost always appears in dreams as a figure of the same sex as the dreamer, for it is a disowned part of our own identity. This figure might be a terrifying pursuer, a dark and menacing stranger chasing us through shadowy alleyways. This classic chase dream is often the shadow begging for our attention, running after us because we refuse to turn around and face it. The shadow can also appear as a figure we feel intense contempt or disgust for. Apathetic, weak, or immoral person that makes our skin crawl. The key is the emotional charge. If a dream character provokes a powerful and irrational reaction of fear, hatred, or shame in you, you are very likely looking at a mirror of your own shadow. When we refuse to look at the shadow within ourselves, we are doomed to see it everywhere, outside of us. This is the dangerous psychological mechanism of projection. The unconscious parts of ourselves are projected onto the people and groups around us. That coworker you despise for being lazy and incompetent, perhaps they are carrying the projection of your own denied incompetence, your own fear of not being good enough. The neighbor you judge for being arrogant and loud, perhaps they are a screen for your own repressed grandiosity. We create demons out of other human beings so that we don't have to face the darkness within. This is the source of so much conflict, from petty gossip to brutal wars. It is also a massive drain on our life force, blocking our path to prosperity and peace. You cannot build a beautiful life if you are constantly at war with enemies who are, in reality, just reflections of your own inner, unacknowledged world. The classic literary masterpiece, Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is perhaps the greatest cautionary tale ever written about the shadow. Dr. Henry Jekyll is the epitome of the conscious ego, a respected, virtuous, and successful scientist. He is the perfect gentleman, but Jekyll is acutely aware of a darker side within him, a side full of impulses and desires that clash with his respectable persona. His fatal mistake is not in having a dark side, for we all do, but in his attempt to deal with it through complete separation. He creates a potion to split himself in two, to give his darker nature its own body, its own life, free from the constraints of his conscience. This is the birth of Edward Hyde, who is not a mix of good and evil, but pure, unadulterated shadow. At first, Jekyll feels liberated, able to indulge his darkest whims as Hyde and then return to his pristine life. But he fails to understand a fundamental law of the psyche: what you resist persists, and what you repress grows stronger in the dark. Hyde, fed by Jekyll's denial, begins to grow more powerful, more demanding. He starts to emerge even without the potion. The wall between them crumbles, and the respectable doctor finds himself trapped, his life consumed by the very monster he created, culminating in their shared destruction. This is not just a horror story. It is a psychological diagnosis of a soul that refused to integrate its own darkness. This might sound terrifying, but Jung's most profound insight about the shadow is also his most hopeful. He famously stated that the shadow contains 90% pure gold. What did he mean? He meant that in our haste to banish what we deemed bad, we threw out vital and valuable parts of ourselves. Locked away with our rage is our passion, our life force, the energy to protect ourselves and fight for what is right. Hidden with our fear is our prudence and our ability to plan. Tucked away with our sadness is our capacity for empathy and deep connection. Hidden in the shadow is our repressed creativity, our unorthodox ideas, our untamed spirit. The path to enlightenment and true self-development, as Jung said, is not found by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The work is not to kill Mr. Hyde, but to bring him out of the cellar and into the conscious light, to listen to him, to understand his needs, and to integrate his energy back into the whole personality in a mature and constructive way. This is the alchemical work. It is taking the lead of our rejected self and transforming it into the gold of a whole and authentic being. When we do this, The energy we once used to suppress our shadow is liberated, becoming available for us to build the life we truly desire. The journey into the depths begins here, with the courage to turn around, face our pursuer, and ask a simple question: what do you have to show me? But this personal cellar is only the first level of the house. Beneath it lies a far deeper, more ancient, and more mysterious foundation. A place Jung called the collective unconscious. If your personal unconscious is the basement of the house that is your psyche, a space filled with your own forgotten furniture and locked away belongings, we now come to Carl Jung's most audacious and revolutionary discovery. It is the discovery that if you were to dig deeper, to break through the stone foundation of your own personal cellar, you would not find inert earth. You would find that your house is built upon the ruins of another, much older structure, and that structure is built upon one even older than that. And on, down into the bedrock of time itself, you would discover that your personal history rests upon a shared history, that you are connected to a foundation that is common to all of humanity. This deep, shared foundation is what Jung called the collective unconscious. This concept is perhaps the most significant departure from all prior psychology, as it proposes that we are far more than just the product of our own short lives. To grasp this idea, let us return to our image of the island. Your conscious mind is the visible tip of your own private island in the sea. The shoreline, with the tides washing up forgotten memories, and the personal basement beneath the surface. That is your personal unconscious. But what is the water itself? The vast, deep ocean that surrounds and connects your island to every other island on the planet. The ocean that contains the ancient currents, the timeless patterns of weather, and the fundamental forms of life that are common to the entire globe. That is the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, its contents were never experienced by you as an individual and then forgotten. They are innate. They are a psychic inheritance, passed down not through tradition or education, but through the very structure of the human brain, accumulated over millions of years of our ancestors experiencing the world. They are the psychic equivalent of instincts. A bird does not need to be taught how to build a nest. The blueprint is born within it. In the same way, Jung argued, humans are born with a set of innate psychological blueprints, a predisposition to experience and understand the world in characteristically human ways. We are all born with the latent capacity to recognize a mother figure, to imagine a hero, to fear the dark, to seek the light. These are the shared memories of our species. This is a breathtaking claim, and Jung did not make it lightly. He spent his life gathering evidence, not from a laboratory, but from the living expressions of the human soul. He looked at the great myths and legends from every corner of the earth, from cultures that had absolutely no physical contact with one another. And he was stunned by the similarities. Why did the ancient Babylonians, the Hindus, and the indigenous peoples of the Americas all have a story of a great flood that wiped out humanity, saving only a chosen few on a boat? Why does the story of the hero who must descend into the underworld, slay a monster, and return with a treasure appear in countless cultures? From the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur to the epic of the Sumerian Gilgamesh, why does the symbol of the world tree, an axis connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld, appear in Norse, Siberian, and Mesoamerican traditions alike? For Jung, the only plausible explanation was that these stories were not being independently invented. They were being discovered, emerging spontaneously from a shared, underlying psychic structure, the collective unconscious. The myths were like the dreams of an entire culture, revealing the timeless, universal dramas of the human soul. But his most compelling evidence often came from his own consulting room. He would listen to the dreams of his patients, ordinary, educated Swiss people, businessmen, housewives, students who had no special knowledge of comparative mythology. And yet, They would describe dreams containing incredibly specific and complex symbols that they could not possibly have learned. A patient might dream of a figure with the head of a lion and a serpent wrapped around its body, having no idea that they had just produced a perfect image of Ion, a god from the ancient mystery religion of Mithraism. Another might dream of a cosmic egg from which the world is born, a symbol found in Egyptian, Hindu, and Polynesian creation myths. Where did these images come from? They weren't from the dreamer's personal basement. These were not personal memories. They were like ancient sea creatures rising from the abyssal depths of the ocean. Primordial images bubbling up from the shared inheritance of the human psyche. The moment of absolute certainty for Jung came, as it so often did, from one of his own dreams. It was a dream so profound it became the cornerstone of his life's work. In the dream, he found himself in a house that he knew was his own. He was on the upper floor, in a salon furnished in the elegant, ornate style of the 18th century. He marveled at it, but then realized he didn't know what the ground floor looked like. He descended the stairs and found himself in a much older setting. The furnishings were medieval. The room was dark. The masonry was from the 15th or 16th century. His curiosity grew, and he explored further, finding a heavy door that led down a stone staircase into a cellar. The cellar was even older, with beautiful Roman vaulting, clearly from antiquity. He was standing on the foundations of a Roman villa, but his exploring mind was not satisfied. He noticed a stone slab with a ring set into it on the floor. He pulled it up, revealing another, narrower staircase leading down into true darkness. He descended cautiously and found himself in a low cave, cut into the rock. The floor was dusty, and scattered in the dust were bones, broken pottery, the remnants of a primitive, prehistoric culture. And here, he awoke. The meaning of the dream struck him with the force of a revelation. The house was an image of the human psyche, his own psyche. The upper floor was his conscious personality, shaped by the recent past. The ground floor was the generation before him. The Roman cellar was the foundation of our Western civilization. But the cave, the final, deepest level, was the world of primitive man, a world that is still within us, a foundation shared by all people. From all times, the dream was showing him that our individual consciousness is just the latest room in a house that has been built over eons, and that we still have access to all the floors below, right down to the primal cave of our earliest ancestors. This is the collective unconscious. This is why some dreams feel so different from others. Most of our dreams are personal, dealing with the leftover business of our day, our personal anxieties and desires. But sometimes, we have what Jung called a big dream. These dreams have a unique quality, a feeling of sacredness, of numinous power. They seem to come not from our personal self, but from a vast, impersonal intelligence. They are filled with awe-inspiring landscapes, strange geometric symbols like mandalas, or encounters with divine or demonic figures. These dreams often come at critical turning points in our lives. During times of great crisis or transformation, they feel like a message from the universe itself. Because in a way, they are a message from the collected wisdom of the human species, reminding us that our personal struggle is part of a timeless pattern, that we are not alone in our journey. When we dream from this level, we are no longer just in our own little basement. We are swimming in the great ocean of shared memory. This ocean, however, is not empty. It is populated by powerful, dynamic patterns of energy. These are the primal inhabitants of the inner world, the forces that shape our myths, our religions, and our very lives. Jung gave them a name, the archetypes. If the collective unconscious is the vast, ancient ocean that connects all of humanity, we must now ask a critical question. What lives in this ocean? What are its currents, its tides, its great creatures? The answers are the very foundations of our psychic life, the invisible forces that shape our stories, our religions, and our dreams. Jung called these fundamental patterns the archetypes. To understand the archetypes is to understand the very blueprints of the human soul. An archetype is not a specific image or idea that we inherit. You are not born with a picture of your mother in your head. Rather, you are born with the potential for a mother, an empty psychic slot, a pre-existing readiness to experience and respond to a nurturing figure in a way that is distinctly human. The archetype itself is like a dry riverbed, a channel carved into our psychic landscape by millions of years of human experience. It is only when the waters of our own individual life flow into it that the riverbed becomes a living river. The archetype of the mother is the empty riverbed. Your actual relationship with your own mother, or a grandmother, or a teacher, is the water that fills it, giving it a unique and personal character. These archetypes are psychic instincts. Just as a sea turtle hatchling has a behavioral instinct to crawl towards the brightest horizon to find the sea, we have psychic instincts that draw us towards fundamental human experiences. We are born with an innate capacity to comprehend heroism, to recognize wisdom, to feel the sacred, to fear betrayal. These are the archetypes, the primordial organizing principles of our imagination. It's crucial to know that the archetype itself is neutral, or rather, bipolar. It has both a light and a dark pole, a positive and a negative potential. The mother archetype, for example, can manifest as the great mother, loving, nurturing, unconditionally accepting, the source of all life and comfort. But it can also manifest as the terrible mother, devouring, smothering, clinging, a force that prevents growth and consumes individuality. Which pole of the archetype becomes activated in our lives depends on our personal experiences. A child raised with love and security will primarily experience the positive pole, while a child who experiences neglect or control will be haunted by the negative. So how do these powerful, invisible patterns show up on the screen of our dreams? They need a costume. The archetype itself is a formless energy, a pattern. To enter our conscious awareness, it must be clothed in a specific image drawn from our personal life, from our culture, or from our imagination. For instance, you might be facing a major ethical dilemma at work, a situation that calls for profound wisdom and guidance. This situation activates the archetype of the wise old man. That night, you might dream of your beloved grandfather who has passed away, giving you advice. Or you might dream of a former professor you respected, or even a fictional character like Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, the figure in the dream your grandfather. The professor, the wizard is the symbol. The costume, the powerful, numinous energy of wisdom that the figure radiates. The feeling that you are receiving a truth far greater than that person alone could provide. That is the energy of the archetype itself, shining through the symbolic mask. This is why dream figures can feel so intensely real and significant, because they are often more than just memories. They are vessels for these immense, transpersonal psychic forces. Perhaps the easiest way to see the archetypes in action is to look at our modern mythology, the great stories that captivate millions. George Lucas's original Star Wars saga is a perfect example. A story that resonates so deeply precisely because it is built upon a purely archetypal foundation. Luke Skywalker is not just a character, he is a perfect embodiment of the hero archetype. He begins in obscurity, receives a call to adventure, initially refuses it, but is then guided by a mentor. He must leave his familiar world behind, face a series of trials, learn to master a secret power, the Force, and ultimately confront the embodiment of evil to restore balance to the universe. This is the universal hero's journey, a story told in 1,000 different ways across 1,000 cultures. Obi-Wan Kenobi, and later Yoda, are flawless expressions of the wise old man archetype. They are the guardians of ancient wisdom, the mentors who bestow a magical gift upon the hero, the lightsaber, the training, and who often must sacrifice themselves so that the hero's journey can continue. And what of Darth Vader? He is a magnificent, complex vessel for several powerful archetypes. He is, most obviously, the shadow, the dark reflection of the hero himself. He represents what Luke could become if he succumbs to fear and anger. His black armor and helmet are a perfect symbol for a man who has become trapped inside his own dark persona. But he is also the terrible father, the tyrannical, oppressive authority figure who the hero must overcome to claim his own strength and identity. The climactic revelation, "I am your father," is not just a plot twist. It is a profound psychological statement about confronting the darkest parts of one's own legacy and origins. Princess Leia is not just a damsel in distress, she is a powerful soul figure, the anima who inspires the hero's quest. But she is also a hero in her own right, a leader of the rebellion, embodying courage and defiance. The story works. It feels true on a gut level, because we instinctively recognize the archetypal patterns playing out on the screen. We are not just watching a space opera, we are watching the drama of our own souls. The archetypes, then, are the primary actors on the stage of your inner world. They are the essential characters in the story of your own life and your own journey toward wholeness. In the sections that follow, we will get to know the most important of these figures personally. The ones you will meet time and time again in your dreams and in your life. We will begin with the outermost layer, the face you show to the world, your social mask, known as the persona. Then, we will turn to face the figure you keep hidden in the dark, your rejected self, the shadow. Following that, we will explore the mysterious and powerful inner figures of the opposite gender that live within you. The feminine soul image in men called the anima, and the masculine spirit image in women called the animus. And finally, we will journey toward the center, toward the master archetype, the one that represents the totality of who you are and who you are meant to become, the divine spark within. The archetype of wholeness itself, which Jung called the self. This is the cast of your inner drama. Learning to recognize them is the first step toward understanding the great story that your soul is trying to tell you. As we begin our tour of the inner world and its powerful inhabitants, we start not in the deepest dungeon or the most sacred temple, but on the front porch, at the very threshold between our private self and the public world. Here we meet the first and most visible of the archetypes, the one we spend a lifetime crafting and presenting to others. This is the persona. The word itself comes to us from Latin, where it referred to the large, stylized masks worn by actors in ancient Greek drama. The mask served a brilliant purpose. It signified to the audience which character the actor was playing: the tragic king, the grieving mother, the clever servant. The audience understood that the man behind the mask was not the king, but the mask allowed him to perform that role effectively. This is the perfect metaphor for the psychological persona. It is the collection of social masks we wear to perform our various roles in the drama of life. You have a persona for your job, one that is professional, competent, and collaborative. You have another persona for your family. Perhaps as a responsible parent or a dutiful child. You have yet another with your friends, one that might be more relaxed, humorous, and informal. It is essential to understand that the persona is not a bad thing. It is not a lie, or a sign of being fake. A well-developed and flexible persona is a vital tool for navigating a complex social world. It is an adaptive mechanism, a kind of psychological skin that protects our more vulnerable, private self from the constant friction of public life. Imagine a surgeon entering the operating room. She must don a persona of calm, authority, and unshakable competence. This inspires trust in her team and her patients, and it allows her to perform her demanding job without being overwhelmed by the intense emotions of the situation. Imagine a teacher facing a class of 30 children. He needs a persona of patience, knowledge, and gentle authority to create a healthy learning environment. Without a persona, we would be raw, exposed nerves, blurting out every fleeting thought and feeling, unable to maintain the boundaries necessary for society to function. It is the uniform we wear for the job, the social contract we agree to, the interface between our individual ego and the collective expectations of the world. In this sense, a healthy persona is a sign of maturity and social intelligence. The danger, however, is profound, and it is the source of a uniquely modern form of suffering. The danger arises when the actor forgets he is wearing a mask. It is when we become fused with our role, when we mistake the persona for our true self. This is what Jung called identification with the persona. The professor starts to believe he is nothing but his intellect. The beautiful woman starts to believe she is nothing but her appearance. The wealthy CEO starts to believe he is nothing but his bank account. The mask becomes glued to the skin. When this happens, our true self, the ego, and the deeper life of the soul begins to suffocate. Life becomes a hollow performance rather than an authentic experience. This leads to a pervasive feeling of being a fraud, what we now call imposter syndrome. Despite the external success, awards, and applause, there is a nagging inner voice that whispers, "If they only knew who I really was, they would hate me." This is because we intuitively know we are not the mask, and we live in terror of being exposed. This creates a state of profound emptiness, a spiritual exhaustion that no amount of external validation can cure. We are living a mannequin life, perfectly dressed and posed in the window of society, but hollow and lifeless on the inside. When the conscious mind becomes this rigid and identified with the persona, the unconscious psyche, in its eternal quest for balance, will begin to rebel. And the primary stage for this rebellion is our dreams. The psyche will use the dream world to forcibly strip the mask from our face. The most common and direct example of this is the classic anxiety dream of being naked in public. You find yourself in your office, at a party, or giving a speech, and you suddenly realize you are completely unclothed. The horror and shame you feel in the dream is the ego's terror at being seen without its protective armor, without its persona. The dream is a compensatory message, saying, "This role you play, this title you hold, this reputation you have built, it is just a costume. This is you underneath, simply a vulnerable, exposed human being. This is your reality." Another common tactic of the psyche is the dream of wearing the wrong clothes. You might dream of showing up to a critical board meeting in your pajamas, or attending a solemn funeral dressed in a glittering disco outfit. The dream uses absurdity to make a powerful point. It is highlighting how stiff, inappropriate, or out of sync our persona has become with our true inner state. It's the psyche's way of saying, "This serious, professional mask you wear is ridiculous." Inside, you feel as lost and unprepared as a child in his pajamas. Consider the story of a world-famous actor, a man whose entire public persona is built on playing indestructible action heroes. He is the image of masculine strength, courage, and confidence. His fans adore him. His interviews are flawless. His public image is impeccable. But every night, when he sleeps, his dreams tell a different story. He dreams that he is a sniveling, pathetic coward. He dreams of running in terror from a small, yapping dog. He dreams of being on a movie set, unable to lift a cardboard sword, weeping and begging for mercy from the villain. He wakes from these dreams in a cold sweat, disgusted with the pathetic figure he became. Now, the dream is not telling him that he is, in secret, a coward. It is providing a powerful, healing dose of compensation. His conscious identification with the invincible hero persona has become so extreme that it threatens to destroy his humanity. It has forced all his natural human vulnerability, his fear, his weakness, into the shadow. His dreams are a desperate attempt by his psyche to save him from becoming a hollow caricature. They are reintroducing him to the lost, neglected parts of himself, reminding him that true strength includes the ability to acknowledge weakness. The goal, then, is not to get rid of the persona. To live without one is to be a social casualty. The goal is to achieve a conscious and flexible relationship with it. It is the difference between being a mannequin and being a masterful actor. A masterful actor can play many roles, but he never forgets who he is when he takes off the costume. The work is to cultivate a persona that is not a thick, rigid wall, but a semi-permeable membrane, one that is sturdy enough to function effectively in the world, but transparent enough to allow the light of your true self to shine through. It means knowing which mask you are wearing, and why. And most importantly, knowing how to take it off when you come home. It is about closing the gap between the person you pretend to be and the person you actually are. For only when we loosen the grip of the persona can we begin to hear the whispers of the deeper figures who wait for us in the wings. Starting with the one who has been most rejected, our own personal shadow. Once we have dared to look at the mask we present to the world, the persona, and have begun the courageous work of facing our rejected self, the shadow, we journey deeper into the psychic landscape. Here, we encounter a figure of a different nature altogether. This figure is not made of our rejected personal traits, but is a living gateway to the collective unconscious itself. It is the archetype that represents the principle of otherness within us, the inner figure of the opposite psychological sex. For a man, this figure is the anima, his inner woman, his soul image. She is one of the most powerful, dynamic, and vital figures he will ever meet on his inner journey. The anima is far more than just a man's feminine side. She is a complex, autonomous personality within his psyche, an entity shaped by two powerful sources. First, she is colored by his personal experiences with the significant women in his life, beginning with his mother, who is the first carrier of his anima projection, and later including sisters, teachers, friends, and lovers. But more fundamentally, the anima is an archetype, an innate psychic structure inherited from the collective experience of men interacting with women for millennia. She is the vessel for all the qualities that a man's conscious masculine ego has often defined as not me. In a world that frequently conditions men to be logical, competitive, assertive, and emotionally contained, the anima carries the repressed counterparts, the capacity for deep feeling and emotion, the power of intuition, the wisdom of personal relatedness over abstract principles, a sensitivity to nature, and the unpredictable spark of creativity and imagination. When a man is unconscious of his anima, she does not simply lie dormant. She lives, but she lives outside of him. He projects her onto the women he meets in the outer world. This is the force behind the sudden, all-consuming experience of falling in love at first sight. A man sees a woman across a crowded room, and in an instant, he is captivated, enchanted, utterly convinced that she is the one, the perfect being he has been searching for his entire life. What is happening, from a Jungian perspective, is that this outer woman has a hook upon which he can hang the entire tapestry of his own soul image. He is not seeing the real, complex, flawed human being before him. He is seeing his own soul, externalized. This kind of projection is the source of intense romantic passion, but it is also the seed of bitter disappointment. For no real woman can possibly live up to the divine, perfect image of a man's projected anima. When the projection inevitably shatters, he may become resentful and cynical, blaming the woman for not being who he thought she was, never realizing he was in love with a ghost from his own inner world. An unconscious anima can also be destructive, causing a man to be subject to dark moods, irrational emotional outbursts, and petty irritability. As his unacknowledged feminine side erupts in immature and uncontrolled ways, the journey of a man's psychological maturation can be understood as the journey of integrating and developing his anima. Jung outlined 4 distinct stages of this development, each represented by a symbolic female figure. The first stage is Eve. This is the anima in her most primitive, biological form. She represents the purely instinctual feminine, the Earth Mother, the temptress. A man at this stage relates to women primarily as physical beings, as objects of desire or as potential mothers for his children. His connection is earthly, biological, and not yet truly personal. The second stage is Helen of Troy. Here, the anima develops an aesthetic and romantic quality. She is the beautiful muse, the desirable prize, the figure who inspires great art and heroic deeds. The man at this stage is capable of great passion and chivalry, but his love is still largely possessive. Helen is an individual, but her value is primarily defined by her beauty and her effect on him. The third stage represents a profound shift. This is the stage of the Virgin Mary. Here, the anima is elevated to a spiritual level. She becomes the vessel of devotion, purity, and sacred feeling. A man at this stage is capable of a love that transcends the personal, a love that is faithful and chaste. He learns to see the feminine not just as an object of desire, but as a source of spiritual value and virtue. But the ultimate goal of the journey is the fourth stage, represented by Sophia, the Greek goddess of wisdom. At this level, the anima becomes a man's ultimate inner guide. She is no longer just an object of desire or devotion. She is a partner, a source of profound insight, a mediator between his conscious mind and the deepest wisdom of the collective unconscious. A man who has reached this stage of integration has a relationship with his anima that gives him access to his own best creativity, his most reliable intuition, and a deep sense of meaning in his life. A man's dreams are a direct reflection of where he is on this developmental journey. Does he dream of anonymous sexual encounters? His anima is likely at the stage of Eve. Does he dream of a beautiful but distant celebrity he adores from afar? He is in the realm of Helen. Does he dream of a saintly, nurturing figure who offers him comfort? His anima may be developing into the Virgin Mary archetype. Or does he dream of a mysterious woman who guides him through a dark forest, who helps him solve a complex riddle, or who collaborates with him on a creative project? This is the emergence of Sophia, his inner guide to wholeness. The challenge of this integration is beautifully and tragically illustrated in the ancient Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus was the world's greatest musician, a man whose art could charm wild beasts and move the very stones to tears. He represents the creative, spiritual man. He was deeply in love with his wife, Eurydice, who represents his soul, his anima. One day, Eurydice is bitten by a serpent and dies, descending into the underworld. This symbolizes the man's soul, his anima, falling into the depths of the unconscious. Lost to him, devastated, Orpheus makes a heroic decision. He will use his great gift, his art, to journey into the land of the dead and bring her back. This is the inner work, the descent into the unconscious to reclaim the lost soul. He plays his lyre so beautifully that he charms the ferryman Charon and the three-headed dog Cerberus. He even moves the cold heart of Hades, the king of the underworld, who agrees to release Eurydice on one fateful condition. Orpheus must walk ahead of her and not look back, not even once, until they have both reached the sunlight of the upper world. The journey back begins. Orpheus can hear Eurydice's faint footsteps behind him in the darkness, but he cannot see her. As he nears the exit, just as he steps into the light, he is seized by a moment of terrible doubt. Is she really there? Has Hades tricked him, overcome by his need for certainty, his lack of faith in the process? He turns around. He sees her for a fleeting instant, a sad phantom reaching for him. before she dissolves back into the darkness. This time forever, Orpheus failed because he could not trust the inner connection. He demanded objective proof instead of having faith in the unseen presence of his soul. This myth is a timeless warning about the delicacy and difficulty of this work. Bringing the anima from the unconscious into the light of conscious awareness requires patience, trust, and the courage to walk through darkness without demanding proof. The goal of integrating the anima is not for a man to become weak or effeminate. It is the exact opposite. It is for him to become a whole and complete man. A man with a developed anima is no longer afraid of his own feelings. He can access them as a source of information and connection. He trusts his intuition as a valuable counterpart to his logic. He is in touch with his creative spirit and is able to build a life of purpose and meaning. And perhaps most importantly, because he has found and built a relationship with his inner woman, he is finally free to see and love the outer women in his life as they truly are real, unique, and whole human beings, not just carriers for the projection of his own soul. His journey inward allows him to connect more authentically with the world outside. And just as a man carries this inner feminine, a woman carries a parallel inner masculine figure, a spirit image who shapes her life in equally profound ways, the animus. Just as a man carries within him an inner feminine soul image, the anima, a woman's psyche contains a corresponding inner masculine figure. The animus, he is her inner man, her spirit image, the archetypal representation of the masculine principle within her. To understand the animus is to understand a woman's relationship with her own power, her thoughts, and her ability to manifest her will in the world. In many ways, the task of integrating the animus can be particularly challenging, especially within cultures that have historically prescribed narrow roles for women, where the masculine principle, often defined as logos, the power of reason, logic, and focused opinion, has been seen as the exclusive domain of men. A woman's own inner capacity for these qualities is often repressed, creating an animus figure who is powerful, problematic, and deeply misunderstood. Like the anima, the animus is formed from the combination of a woman's personal experiences with the men in her life, primarily her father, who is the first man to model masculinity for her, and from the collective, archetypal blueprint of the masculine in the human psyche. The animus carries all the qualities that a woman's conscious feminine ego might have been taught to see as unladylike or not for her. These include the capacity for abstract and logical thinking, the ability to form and hold a strong opinion, assertiveness, worldly ambition, and the power to act with decisive, focused intent. When a woman is unconscious of her animus, he doesn't just go away, he takes over. While an unconscious anima often manifests in a man's moody emotionality, an unconscious animus frequently leads to a state of possession by rigid, second-hand opinions. You may have encountered a woman in this state. She doesn't seem to have opinions, rather, the opinions have her. She argues with an aggressive, absolute certainty, often about politics, philosophy, or some abstract principle. But if you listen closely, you realize the ideas are not her own. They are hollow, unexamined dogmas, often quoted verbatim from a father figure, a professor, or some other external authority she respects. The argument is laden with emotion precisely because it isn't grounded in her own reasoned thought. It is the voice of her unconscious animus, speaking through her like a ventriloquist. On the other side of the coin, a woman with an unintegrated animus may project him outward, spending her life searching for a hero, a great man, a guru who can carry all the power, direction, and meaning that she has not yet claimed for herself. The psychological journey of a woman involves building a conscious relationship with this inner figure, transforming him from a possessive tyrant or a projected hero into a valued inner partner. This development can be understood through 4 distinct stages. The first stage is the animus as the man of physical power. He is the action hero, the star athlete, the embodiment of pure physical prowess. Attajan figure. A woman at this stage is often primarily attracted to a man's physical strength and virility. The second stage elevates him to the man of action. This is the romantic hero with initiative, the swashbuckling James Bond who can devise a plan and carry it out. A man of daring and adventure. The third stage marks a significant evolution to the man of the word, or logos. Here, the animus appears as a respected authority figure, a professor, a doctor, a priest, a great statesman. He is the carrier of knowledge, wisdom, and the respected word. This is a powerful and necessary stage, as it connects a woman to the world of ideas and reason. But there is still a danger of projection, of uncritically accepting the word of an external authority rather than developing her own. The final and most crucial stage is the animus as the embodiment of meaning. He becomes a spiritual guide, a Hermes figure, a psychopomp who can travel between the conscious and unconscious worlds. At this level, he is no longer a source of rigid collective opinions, but instead becomes the inner facilitator who helps a woman formulate her own individual consciousness. He becomes the bridge that allows her to take her deep feminine wisdom, her intuition, her feelings, her connection to life, and give it structure, a form, and a voice. He helps her to write her book, to start her business, to articulate her unique truth. He becomes her partner in creation. A woman's dreams vividly chart the course of this relationship. The animus, representing the collective nature of opinion, often appears in dreams, not as one man, but as a group or a committee. Is she dreaming of being attacked or pursued by a menacing gang of men? This can represent a negative animus, and her own unintegrated assertive energy turned against her, or a fear of the judgment of collective opinion. Does she dream of being lectured by a panel of stern, critical judges? This is the animus as the carrier of rigid, patriarchal dogma, the inner critic who tells her she is wrong or not good enough. Conversely, a dream of being rescued by a handsome, heroic stranger often points to a projected animus, a desire for an outer figure to solve her problems. A positive, developing animus might appear as a helpful male guide who gives her a map, a key, or a tool. He might be an unknown but intriguing stranger who works alongside her, or a wise teacher who asks questions that lead her to her own answers, symbolizing the growth of her own independent thought and purposeful action. The beloved fairy tale of Beauty and the Beast serves as a perfect myth for the integration of the animus. The beast is the animus in his raw, untamed, and terrifying form. He is instinctual power, rough energy, frighteningly other to the civilized, well-mannered world of Belle. He is the embodiment of the potent masculine energy, the assertiveness, the aggression, the raw ambition that a good girl is taught to fear and reject as ugly. Belle's initial reaction is one of terror and revulsion. Yet, her heroic task is not to slay the beast, but to live with him, to relate to him, to look past his monstrous exterior and engage with the being within. This is a beautiful metaphor for the inner work a woman must do. She must confront her own feared and rejected masculine qualities, her ambition, her power, her beastly side, and build a conscious relationship with them. As Belle shares meals with the beast, reads to him, and argues with him, she begins to see glimpses of his lonely tormented heart. Through her willingness to relate to him with courage and compassion, the magical transformation occurs. Her love and acceptance break the curse, and the beast becomes a handsome prince. This symbolizes the moment of integration, when a woman befriends her own inner power instead of fearing it. It ceases to be a destructive monster that possesses her, and is instead transformed into her inner prince, a source of sovereign strength, clarity, creativity, and conscious partnership. Integrating the animus does not mean a woman loses her femininity. It means she completes it. It frees her from the need for a man's approval for her thoughts. And it liberates her from being possessed by a harsh, critical inner voice. It gives her access to her own clear thinking, her own authentic voice, her courage to stand her ground, and her ability to bring the unique creations of her soul into tangible reality. Her animus becomes her bridge to the world, a partner who allows her to act with both love and logic, with both intuition and intellect. Having now met these powerful, gendered soul figures, the anima and animus, we must turn our attention to the very language they speak, the language of the psyche itself, the rich, mysterious, and deeply personal language of symbols. Having met the primary inhabitants of our inner world, the persona, the shadow, the anima, and the animus, we must now learn to understand the very language they speak. The psyche does not communicate in the clear, direct prose of our conscious minds. It speaks in a language of poetry, of metaphor, of rich and resonant imagery. It speaks the language of symbols. And the greatest mistake we can make on this journey is to approach this sacred language with the crude tool of a dream dictionary. To look up snake and see enemy, or to look up water and see emotion, is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of a symbol. A dictionary definition is a sign. A sign has a simple one-to-one correspondence. A red light is a sign that means stop. Its meaning is fixed, known, and exhausted in its definition. A symbol, however, is radically different. A symbol, as Jung defined it, is the best possible expression for something that is not yet fully known. It is a vessel, a container for a meaning that is still unfolding, still emerging from the depths of the unconscious. A symbol is alive. It does not point to one thing. It gestures toward many things at once. It is rich with paradox and layered with meaning. To treat a dream symbol as a sign is to take a vast, mysterious, and beautiful landscape and reduce it to a single, flat dot on a map. Our task is not to decode our dreams, but to enter into a dialogue with them. And the method for this dialogue, the Jungian alternative to the dream dictionary, is a process called amplification. Amplification is the art of weaving a web of meaning around a dream image, of listening to its echoes in our personal life, our culture, and our shared human history. It involves looking at the symbol from every possible angle, allowing its hidden facets to catch the light. Let us explore some of the most common and powerful symbols from the dream landscape, not to define them, but to learn how to amplify them. We begin with water. For water is often a direct image of the unconscious itself. When you dream of water, the first question is always about its state and your relationship to it. Are you swimming in a vast, deep ocean? This often points to the collective unconscious, a feeling of being immersed in something immense and transpersonal. Are you standing on the shore of a calm lake? This could represent your personal unconscious, a more contained and knowable body of psychic content. Are you being carried by a flowing river? This often symbolizes the river of life, the flow of your psychic energy, your libido. But the quality of the water is everything. Is it crystal clear, suggesting conscious clarity, or is it dark and murky, pointing to confusion and repressed content you cannot see? Is it a raging flood or a terrifying tsunami, threatening to overwhelm you? This often speaks to overwhelming emotions or unconscious contents breaking through your conscious defenses. Or is it a stagnant, lifeless swamp, suggesting your energy is stuck and needs to move? By asking these questions, you begin a dialogue with the image, connecting it to your own emotional state. Next, consider the symbol of a house. A house in a dream is almost always a symbol for your own psyche, yourself. The condition of the house, its rooms, and its hidden passages reveal the structure and state of your inner world. The outside of the house, its facade, is often your persona, the face you show the world, The main living areas, like the living room or dining room, represent your conscious ego, and the places where you are most at home with yourself and relate to others. The kitchen is a place of alchemy and transformation, where raw ingredients are made into nourishing food, symbolizing psychological change. The bedroom is a space of intimacy, vulnerability, and rest, often where our most unconscious selves feel safest. The attic can symbolize your thoughts, your spirit, your higher consciousness, or it can be a place where old, forgotten memories are stored away. But the most charged area is often the basement. The basement is a direct image of the personal unconscious. It is below the main living area, often dark, and contains the foundations of the house, as well as everything we have stored away, our primitive instincts, our forgotten traumas, and very often, our shadow. To dream of discovering a new, unknown room in your house is a powerful omen, suggesting you are on the verge of discovering a new, unknown part of yourself. Finally, we turn to animals. Animals in dreams are potent symbols of our instinctual nature, the parts of us that are pre-human, non-rational, and connected to the wisdom of the body and the earth. Each animal carries a universe of meaning. Consider the snake. In Western culture, we immediately think of danger, poison, and the temptation in the Garden of Eden. And this is certainly one pole of its meaning. But we must amplify. The snake also sheds its skin, making it a universal symbol of transformation, death, and rebirth. The symbol for medicine and healing is the rod of Asclepius, with a serpent wrapped around it. In Eastern traditions, the Kundalini energy is a coiled serpent at the base of the spine, representing pure spiritual power. So, is the snake in your dream a threat? Or is it an invitation to profound transformation? A bird often represents the spirit, thoughts, and the power of transcendence. But a soaring eagle is very different from a small bird trapped in a cage, which might symbolize a spirit that feels confined and unable to fly. A dog, man's best friend, often symbolizes loyalty, companionship, and our tamed, domesticated instincts. But a vicious, snarling dog can represent a part of our own instinctual nature that has turned against us. A loyalty that has become a snarling defense mechanism. To see how amplification works in practice, let us take a specific dream. I dreamed of a golden snake shedding its skin in the basement of my childhood home. A dream dictionary would be useless here, but let us amplify. First, the childhood home. We ask personal questions. What was that time of my life like? What feelings does that house evoke archetypally? It is the place of our origins, our psychological roots, where our core patterns were formed. Next, the basement. Personal questions. Was our basement a scary place or a playroom? What was stored there archetypally? It is the personal unconscious, the foundation beneath our consciousness, where repressed contents are held. Then, the snake. Personal. Am I terrified of snakes? Or do I find them beautiful? Cultural. Archetypal. We remember its dual nature, danger and temptation, but also healing, renewal, and spiritual energy. Then, the color golden. Gold is almost universally a symbol of the highest value. It represents the sun, consciousness, incorruptibility, royalty, and in alchemy, the achievement of the integrated self. Finally, the action shedding its skin. This is perhaps the most direct symbol of all. It is transformation made visible. It is the painful but necessary process of letting go of an old form, an old identity, to allow a new one to emerge. Now, we weave it all together. The dream is not a literal warning. It is a profound message from the psyche. It is saying something like this: listen, in the very foundation of your psychological origins, the basement of your childhood home, a process of the highest spiritual value, a golden snake, is underway. This process involves the transformation and renewal of your most primal, instinctual energy. You are letting go of an old way of being, an old identity, and a new, more valuable, and more conscious self is emerging. Suddenly, a potentially frightening image is revealed to be an incredibly hopeful and sacred message. This is the magic of amplification. It respects the dream, honors its complexity, and empowers you, the dreamer, to be the final authority on its meaning. For the symbols of your dreams, speak a language that is ultimately, uniquely, and profoundly your own. As we become more fluent in the psyche's language of symbols, we begin to notice that it does not just show us still images, it tells stories. Dreams are the cinema of the soul. And like any great cinematic tradition, they have recurring plots, common narratives that appear again and again across all cultures and all times. These are the archetypal motifs of the dream world. By understanding these common plots, we can gain even deeper insight into the drama of our own inner lives. We will begin with 3 of the most visceral and universal motifs. The ones that engage our bodies as much as our minds, the terrifying flight of being chased, the stomach-lurching terror of falling, and the exhilarating freedom of flying. There is perhaps no dream more common or more universally terrifying than being chased. The experience is primal. Your heart pounds in your chest. Your lungs burn. Your legs feel heavy, as if you are running through thick mud or molasses. You dare not look back, but you can feel the presence of your pursuer, a dark figure, a monstrous creature, a menacing mob gaining on you, their intent filled with malice. The dream is a pure distillation of anxiety and dread. When you wake from such a dream, your body is often flooded with real adrenaline, and the feeling of terror can linger for hours. The first question our conscious mind asks is, what was chasing me? But the Jungian approach invites a more profound question. What part of myself was I running from? More often than not, the figure pursuing you in a dream is a representative of your own shadow. It is a part of your own personality, an unacknowledged anger, a denied vulnerability, a repressed ambition that you have exiled from your conscious life. And because it has been ignored, it is now desperately and frighteningly trying to get your attention. The dream is a drama of avoidance. The terror you feel is the terror of facing this disowned part of yourself. So, what is the work? The work is to stop running. This may seem counterintuitive, even impossible within the dream's logic. But the bravest and most transformative thing you can do in a chase dream is to turn around and face your pursuer. In many documented cases of dream work, when the dreamer finds the courage to do this, a miraculous transformation occurs. The terrifying monster may shrink into a small, frightened child. The menacing figure may stop and offer you a gift. The pursuer may reveal itself to be a long-lost friend. By facing the energy, you rob it of its monstrous power and begin the process of integration. This inner drama is almost always reflecting an outer one. Ask yourself, what am I running from in my waking life? Is it a difficult conversation I need to have? A responsibility I am shirking? A hard truth about my job or my relationship that I refuse to admit? The dream gives a face and a form, your avoidance, urging you to find the courage not to escape, but to engage. Just as common and equally terrifying is the dream of falling. There is no pursuer, only gravity and a terrifying, empty space. The ground gives way beneath you. You trip at the edge of a cliff, or you simply find yourself plummeting through the air with nothing to hold on to. The experience is one of complete and utter powerlessness. It is often so visceral that it triggers a hypnic jerk, a powerful muscle contraction that jolts you awake, your body reacting as if to a real physical fall. From a Jungian perspective, the dream of falling almost always points to a loss of control in your conscious life. Your ego, the part of you that likes to feel competent, stable, and in charge, is experiencing a situation where its foundation is crumbling. The dream is a direct, somatic metaphor for a psychological state. You might have this dream when you are facing the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, a financial crisis, or any major life transition that makes you feel insecure and ungrounded. It is the psyche's way of screaming, "I've lost my footing or my world is falling apart." The dream is an invitation to examine where your conscious attitude has lost its connection to solid ground. Perhaps your ambitions have become too inflated. Perhaps your sense of identity was too wrapped up in a role, a job, a marriage that is now gone. The dream forces you to confront your own vulnerability and your lack of control. The wisdom here is not to try and stop the falling in the dream, but to address the lack of foundation in your life. It asks you to build a more solid inner ground, one based not on external circumstances, but on an internal sense of worth and resilience, so that when the inevitable storms of life come, you may stumble, but you do not fall into the abyss. In stark contrast to the terror of falling is the pure ecstasy of flying. To dream of flying is often one of the most joyous and liberating experiences one can have. You lift off the ground, soaring effortlessly over landscapes, free from the constraints of gravity and earthly troubles. It is a dream of power, freedom, and transcendence. It often signifies a rising consciousness, an ability to get a bird's eye view of your problems, seeing the bigger picture with a new sense of clarity and detachment. It can be a sign that you are freeing yourself from old, limiting beliefs and embracing a new, more expansive sense of self. It is a deeply spiritual dream, connecting us to the archetypal human longing for liberation and communion with the divine. But like all powerful symbols, flying has a dual nature, a light side and a dark one. While effortless, controlled flight is almost always positive, a dream of difficult or uncontrolled flight can be a warning. And there is no greater cautionary tale about the dangers of flight than the ancient Greek myth of Icarus. Daedalus, a master craftsman, was imprisoned with his son Icarus in a great labyrinth. To escape, Daedalus fashioned 2 pairs of wings from feathers and wax. As he fitted the wings to his son, he gave him a critical warning: fly the middle path. Icarus, fly not too low, for the dampness from the sea will clog your wings, and fly not too high, for the heat from the sun will melt the wax. But Icarus, overwhelmed by the sheer joy and power of flying, forgot his father's words. He felt like a god. He soared higher and higher, driven by a youthful, ecstatic pride. This is the state Jung called psychological inflation, when the ego becomes filled with an archetypal energy it cannot contain, identifying with the godlike power instead of just experiencing it. Inevitably, Icarus flew too close to the sun. The wax melted, the great wings disintegrated, and he plummeted from the sky into the sea, his triumph turning to tragedy. This myth is a perfect illustration of the psyche's warning. If you dream of flying, but you are struggling to stay aloft, or you are flying so high you feel a sense of vertigo and fear, your psyche may be sending you an Icarus warning. It might be telling you that your ego has become inflated, that your ambitions are unrealistic and disconnected from reality, that you have your head in the clouds and are about to come crashing down. The dream asks for the wisdom of Daedalus, the master craftsman, the mature ego. It asks us to find the middle path to enjoy our spiritual highs and our moments of creative inspiration, but to do so with humility, and to always remain connected to the solid ground of reality. These 3 great motifs show us how the psyche uses the most fundamental physical experiences, running, falling, soaring, to tell us profound truths about our psychological state, our relationship with our shadow, our sense of security in the world, and the delicate balance of our spiritual ambition. Beyond the primal motifs of movement that haunt our nights, there exists another category of common dreams, one rooted not in the physics of motion, but in the complex anxieties of our social and personal lives. These are the dreams of exposure, of failure, and of utter powerlessness. They tap into our deepest fears about how we are seen by the world, whether we are good enough, and whether we have any control over our own lives. To understand these dreams is to hold a powerful lens to the most vulnerable parts of our conscious identity. Let us begin with one of the most unsettling social nightmares imaginable, the dream of public nudity. The setting is always one of high stakes. You are about to give a crucial presentation at work. You are walking onto a stage to receive an award. Or you are simply at a crowded party. Suddenly, a cold wave of horror washes over you as you realize you are completely naked. A tidal wave of shame, humiliation, and panic consumes you as you scramble to cover yourself. Your mind racing, utterly mortified by your own exposure. This dream is a direct and unambiguous statement from the psyche, and its target is the persona. As we have discussed, the persona is our social costume, the collection of masks and roles we wear to function in society. The dream of nudity is the psyche's way of forcibly ripping that costume off. It is a powerful, compensatory act. If in your waking life you have become too identified with your professional role, too invested in your public image, or too reliant on external validation, of the dream strips you bare to remind you of a fundamental truth: the role is not you. The titles, the clothes, the reputation, they are all just a covering for the simple, vulnerable, imperfect human being underneath. This dream is the very essence of what has come to be called imposter syndrome. It is the nocturnal dramatization of that secret, gnawing fear that says, if people could see the real me, without my credentials, without my success, without my armor, they would be appalled. They would see that I am a fraud. The dream is not trying to shame you. It is trying to heal you. It is a powerful invitation to greater authenticity. It asks you to bridge the gap between your public self and your private self, to accept your own vulnerability, and to build a sense of self-worth that is not dependent on the costume you wear, but is rooted in the reality of who you are when you are all alone. Equally common and anxiety-inducing is the dream of the unprepared test. You are suddenly back in a classroom from your past high school, college, and you are handed a final exam for a subject you completely forgot to study. The questions might be in a foreign language. The formulas are a meaningless jumble, and the clock on the wall is ticking with terrifying speed. A sense of panic and impending doom washes over you as you face the certainty of failure. It is a remarkable fact that this dream plagues people from all walks of life, often decades after they have left school. This is because the dream has nothing to do with academic performance. The test is a powerful symbol for any situation in our waking lives where we feel we are being judged, evaluated, or put on the spot. It is the psyche's way of giving form to our deep-seated fear of failure and our anxiety about not being good enough in the eyes of others. To illustrate, consider the case of a phenomenally successful CEO, a woman at the pinnacle of her industry, admired for her sharp intellect and confident leadership. Externally, she is the very definition of competence. Yet, for years, she is plagued by a recurring dream. In it, she is always 17 again, sitting in her old high school classroom, staring at a final exam for calculus, a subject she struggled with. She feels a wave of pure stupidity and helplessness, the same feelings she had as a teenager. The dream is a message from her unconscious. It reveals that, despite all her worldly success, a part of her, a shadow aspect, still feels like that insecure 17-year-old, terrified of being exposed as not smart enough. Her powerful, high-achieving persona has been built on top of this unhealed wound. The dream is not mocking her. It is a compassionate call to integration. It is inviting her to acknowledge and heal that young, frightened part of herself, so that her confidence is not a brittle mask, but a deep and authentic quality rooted in self-acceptance, including the acceptance of her own perceived limitations. Finally, we come to perhaps the most terrifying dream experience of all paralysis. The experience is one of absolute, suffocating helplessness. You find yourself awake in your bed, or frozen within a dream narrative, completely unable to move a muscle. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. Your limbs feel as heavy as lead, pinned down by an invisible, immense weight. To compound the terror, this state is often accompanied by the chilling sensation of a malevolent presence in the room, a dark figure at the foot of the bed, a weight on your chest. While there is a recognized medical phenomenon of sleep paralysis, which involves a temporary disconnect between the brain and the body upon waking, the psychological meaning of this motif, whether in a dream or on the edge of sleep, is profound. From a Jungian viewpoint, paralysis symbolizes a state where the conscious ego has been completely overwhelmed and disempowered by a force from the unconscious. It is the ultimate drama of helplessness. This overpowering force could be the shadow, grown so strong and so menacing from being ignored that it can now freeze the ego with pure terror. It could be what Jungians call a complex, an emotionally charged knot of unconscious feelings and memories that has been triggered and has seized control of the psyche. In waking life, this often corresponds to a feeling of being hopelessly trapped, whether in a toxic relationship, a soul-crushing job, or a debilitating depression, a situation where you feel you have absolutely no agency. However, despite the sheer terror of the experience, the dream of paralysis can also be the harbinger of a major psychological breakthrough. The profound stillness can be the darkness just before the dawn. The malevolent presence might be the frightening face of a powerful new aspect of the self trying to be born into consciousness. The ego is paralyzed because it is terrified of the magnitude of this impending change. The dream asks us to confront our deepest feelings of powerlessness. It asks, what force in my life, or in my soul, is holding me frozen? And what new and powerful energy is trying to emerge? An energy so great that my conscious self is resisting it with every fiber of its being. These motifs of nudity, failure, and paralysis are not random torments. They are precise diagnostic tools. They shine a bright, often uncomfortable, light on our most profound social anxieties and our deepest fears about our own competence and control. They show us where our persona is too rigid, where our fear of judgment is holding us back, and where we feel most powerless in our own lives. By listening to their messages with courage, we are given a clear and direct map showing us exactly where the next step on our journey toward wholeness must be taken. After learning to listen to the symbols and stories of our dreams, we arrive at a critical juncture in our inner work. Analysis is vital. It gives us a framework, a map, a way to understand the messages sent from our soul. But analysis alone can remain a purely intellectual exercise, a way of thinking about the psyche from a safe distance. Carl Jung recognized this limitation. He knew that true transformation required more than just interpretation. It required a relationship, and so he developed one of his most powerful and practical tools, a method for moving beyond passive analysis into a living, breathing dialogue with the inner world. This technique is called active imagination. It is the art and science of consciously engaging the figures of your unconscious, not just as objects of study, but as living subjects to be met with. It is the way we turn a monologue about our dreams into a dialogue with the very source from which they spring. It is crucial to first understand what active imagination is not. It is not idle daydreaming. When we daydream, our ego is typically in full control. We construct pleasant fantasies to entertain ourselves, guiding the narrative toward a desired outcome. We are the directors, the screenwriters, and the stars of our own show. Active imagination is almost the precise opposite. It requires the ego to take a step back, to become a participant rather than a director. It demands that we grant autonomy to the images that arise, allowing them to speak for themselves and act in ways we do not expect. It is an act of profound respect for the reality of the psyche. Furthermore, Active imagination is not the same as most common forms of meditation. Many meditative practices are designed to quiet the mind, to observe thoughts and feelings as they arise, and then let them go. Striving for a state of peaceful emptiness or non-attachment. Active imagination, on the other hand, invites you to do the opposite. When a significant image or figure arises, you don't let it go. You grab onto it. You follow it down the rabbit hole. You actively engage it, seeking not to empty the mind, but to explore its rich and varied contents. The method itself is a disciplined practice, one that requires courage, focus, and an open mind. It begins with finding an entry point. This is usually a strong, emotionally charged image from a recent dream, the frightening pursuer, the mysterious animal, the wise guide, the strange object left in your hand. Once you have your image, find a time and a place where you can be quiet and undisturbed. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and enter a state of relaxed concentration. The first step is to bring your chosen image into your mind's eye. See it as vividly as you can, with all the detail and feeling you can remember from the dream. The second, and most magical, step is to give the image life. Consciously allow it to begin to move. Do not force it or direct it. Simply hold the intention for it to become animated. And then observe. What does it do? Where does it turn? The scene will begin to unfold on its own accord. Your job is to be a curious and respectful observer. The third step is to enter the scene as your conscious self. You now step into this inner landscape and approach the figure or object. This is the moment that requires courage. You must consciously decide not to run, not to be passive, but to engage. And this leads to the fourth and most important step, the dialogue. You speak to the figure. You ask it questions. Simple and direct. Who are you? Why were you in my dream? What do you want from me? What message do you have for me? Then you must do the hardest part. You must listen. The answer may come as a thought that enters your mind, one that feels subtly different from your own conscious thoughts. It may come as a feeling or another image. Your task is to engage in a genuine conversation, a back-and-forth exchange. The final step, which Jung considered an ethical obligation, is to ground the experience. After the dialogue has reached a natural conclusion, you must write it down. Record the entire vision, the entire conversation, in a journal. This act honors the unconscious, solidifies the experience, and allows you to reflect on its meaning later with a clear head. To see the transformative power of this practice, let us imagine a man, we'll call him Mark, who has been having a recurring dream of being chased down a dark, narrow alley by a huge, hulking figure in a heavy, dark cloak. The dream always ends in terror. Deciding to try active imagination, Mark sits quietly, closes his eyes, and pictures the alley from his dream. He sees the hulking, cloaked figure at the far end. His heart begins to beat faster, just as it does in the dream. But this time, he makes a different choice. He doesn't run. He holds the image, and in his mind, he takes a single step toward the figure. The figure stops. Mark focuses his intent and asks, his voice trembling even in his own mind, "Who are you? Why are you always chasing me?" For a moment, there is only silence. The figure is immobile. Mark asks again, with more force, "What do you want from me?" Then, a thought forms in his mind. A voice that is low and gravelly. A voice that is not his own. It says, "I am chasing you because you are running." Mark is stunned by the simple, profound logic of the answer. A new kind of courage rises in him. He asks, "What will happen if I stop running?" The figure slowly, deliberately, raises a massive, gloved hand. It opens its palm, and resting there is a heavy, ornate, old-fashioned iron key. I will give you this. The voice says, you dropped it a long time ago. It is the key to your own strength. In that instant, Mark understands. The figure is not a monster, it is his shadow. Yes, but it is the guardian of a part of himself he had long ago abandoned his strength. His assertiveness. The part of him he was taught to repress in order to be a nice, quiet boy. The pursuer was not trying to destroy him. It was trying to return a lost piece of his soul as he reaches out in his imagination to accept the key. The dark cloak falls away from the figure, revealing not a monster, but a powerful, confident version of Mark himself, who gives a slight nod and then merges back into his own being. This is the goal of active imagination. It is not just about having fascinating visions. It is a tool for integration. It is a method for building a conscious, working relationship between the ego and the figures of the inner world. Through this dialogue, we can disarm our inner demons, reclaim our lost strengths, heal our deepest wounds, and receive guidance of an astounding clarity and wisdom. It is the practice that transforms us from being passive victims of our unconscious to becoming active collaborators in the greatest and most important work of our lives, the journey of becoming whole. After we have made the courageous choice to engage with our inner world, whether through diligent dream work or the focused practice of active imagination, a remarkable and often life-changing event can occur. When the conscious ego admits its own limitations, when we finally say, I don't know the way forward, the psyche will often respond by sending a guide. When the student of the soul is truly ready, the inner master appears. This master does not arrive from a distant land or an ancient monastery, but emerges from the deepest and wisest strata of the collective unconscious itself. This is the archetype of the wise old man or the wise old woman, the living personification of spirit, meaning, and a wisdom that transcends our personal experience. Their appearance in a dream is a sign of immense hope, a signal that the full resources of the psyche are mobilizing to help us on our path. These figures are the embodiment of what Jung called the spirit archetype. They represent a consciousness that is higher, broader, and more insightful than our everyday ego. The wise old man often personifies logos, the power of insight, reflection, knowledge, and focused meaning. He is the guru on the mountaintop, the reclusive hermit who holds a secret, the ancient wizard poring over his books, the king who has ruled for 1,000 years. He represents the clarifying power of the mind and the distilled wisdom of the ages. His counterpart, the wise old woman, often called the crone or the great mother in her wisdom aspect, frequently personifies Sophia or Eros, the intuitive, relational wisdom of the earth, the body, and the heart. She is the oracle who speaks in riddles, the herbalist who knows the healing power of plants, the fairy godmother who provides the magical tool at the perfect moment, the midwife who helps us give birth to a new way of being. Whether the figure is male or female, its function is the same: to offer guidance from a place beyond the ego's limited perspective. These figures do not appear for trivial matters. You will not dream of a wise wizard to help you decide what to have for lunch. They emerge at critical junctures, at the major crossroads of our lives. They come to us when we are facing a devastating crisis, a bewildering moral dilemma, or a profound period of transition where our old identity is dying and a new one has not yet been born. They appear when the ego has exhausted all its known strategies and is forced to surrender to a higher power. Their function is not to solve the problem for us. A true guide rarely provides a simple, clear-cut answer. To do so would rob us of our own journey and our own growth. Instead, they offer a crucial piece of the puzzle that we are missing. They might give us a cryptic prophecy, a paradoxical piece of advice, a challenging question that reframes our entire problem, or a symbolic object, a key, a lantern, a sword, a map that we must learn how to use. They represent the accumulated wisdom of the collective unconscious, the experience of countless human lives, distilled into a single, helpful voice that speaks directly to our situation. We see this archetype brilliantly illustrated in our most enduring myths and stories. In the Arthurian legends, Merlin is the quintessential wise old man. He is Arthur's mentor, but he does not rule in his place. He uses his magic and foresight to guide Arthur, to set up the conditions for him to prove his own worth. Like the test of the sword in the stone, Merlin sees the entire pattern of destiny, the vast web of cause and effect. While Arthur can only see the next battle, Merlin represents the magical, non-linear wisdom of the psyche, the part of us that simply knows without needing a logical explanation, a more modern, and perhaps even more beloved example is Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. Dumbledore is a perfect rendering of this archetype. He is immensely powerful, yet he consistently refuses to solve Harry's problems for him. He knows that Harry must face Voldemort himself in order to fulfill his own destiny. So, instead of fighting Harry's battles, Dumbledore provides guidance. He gives clues. Like the Deluminator or the Golden Snitch, he offers profound and often enigmatic counsel, such as, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." He empowers the hero. He doesn't replace him. He provides just enough light for Harry to take the next brave step into the dark. However, as with all powerful archetypes, there is a shadow side. The unconscious is not always a benevolent guide. It can also be treacherous. Therefore, the archetype of wisdom can also appear in a negative form. To test our discernment, it can manifest as what is called a negative senex, an old man who is not wise, but is rigid, dogmatic, cynical, and life-denying, his advice leading to stagnation and despair. Or, even more dangerously, it can appear as a trickster figure, disguised as a wise guru. This figure may seem incredibly intelligent and charismatic, but their advice is subtly flawed, designed to mislead us, to feed our ego's inflation, or to lead us down a path of self-destruction. The psyche does not simply hand us wisdom. It demands that we develop the capacity to recognize it. It forces us to ask ourselves if any advice, inner or outer, does this lead to more life, more growth, more connection, or does it lead to restriction, inflation, and isolation? We must become wise enough to recognize true wisdom. So how do we know when we are in the presence of the true, positive archetype? Encounters with the wise old man or woman in dreams carry a unique feeling, a quality that Jung called numinosity. There is a sense of sacredness, of authority, of being in the presence of something undeniably real and powerful. The figure itself is often calm, centered, and radiates a quiet certainty. The advice they give, even if it is strange or paradoxical, resonates with a deep chord of truth within you. It feels right in a way that transcends logic. And most importantly, an encounter with a true guide leaves you feeling empowered. You may not have all the answers, and the path ahead may be even more daunting than before. But you now have a sense of clarity, hope, and a renewed connection to your own inner resources. You feel seen by a benevolent intelligence. The appearance of the wise old man or the wise old woman in your inner life is a profound gift. It is a sign that you have done the difficult work of moving beyond the surface concerns of the ego and are now ready to engage with the deeper levels of your being. It is an affirmation that you are not alone in your struggle. It means the psyche has deemed you ready for the next stage of the journey. And the arrival of such a powerful guide almost always signifies one thing: a great quest is about to begin. You are being called to embark on your own hero's journey. When a guide like the wise old man or woman appears in our dreams, it is a sign that we are being invited to embark on a journey, not a physical journey to a distant land, but a profound inner quest. And this quest follows a timeless, universal pattern, a story that has been told in 1,000 myths, fairy tales, and sacred texts across every culture in human history. It is the story of the hero, the great mythologist Joseph Campbell, who was deeply influenced by Jung's work, called this the monomyth, or the hero's journey. He discovered that beneath the surface details, all the great stories of transformation from the Buddha to Odysseus, from Moses to Luke Skywalker share the same fundamental structure. This structure is not just a template for storytelling. It is a map of the human soul's journey toward wholeness. It is the story of the ego, our conscious self, bravely venturing into the unknown territory of the unconscious to confront a great darkness and return with a life-giving treasure. And this epic drama is not just playing out in ancient myths. It is unfolding, night after night, in the theater of your own dreams. Your dreams, when viewed over time, can often be seen as chapters in your own personal hero's journey. The journey begins with the call to adventure. The hero is living in their ordinary world, but something disrupts the peace. A problem arises that can no longer be ignored. In our dream lives, this call often comes in the form of an anxiety dream, or most classically, the dream of being chased. That monster or dark figure pursuing you is the herald of the journey, the personification of a problem in your life or your psyche that is demanding your attention. Initially, the hero almost always experiences the refusal of the call. The ego is terrified of the unknown. We want to ignore the problem, to go back to our comfortable, ordinary life. This isn't my problem, we tell ourselves. It will go away. In our dreams, this can manifest as feeling stuck, paralyzed, or having the chase dreams intensify, the pursuer getting closer and more menacing. It is at this point, when we are lost and don't know the way, that we often have the dream of meeting the mentor. As we've discussed, the wise old man or woman appears. They offer a piece of advice, a magical tool, a map. They give us the encouragement or the specific insight we need to finally accept the quest. Armed with this new boon, we make the decision to act. This is crossing the threshold. We leave the known world and enter the special world of the adventure. In dream symbolism, this is often represented by crossing a significant boundary, crossing a river, going through a mysterious door, descending a staircase into a cave, or entering a dark and forbidding forest. All of these are potent symbols for consciously deciding to enter the realm of the unconscious. The heart of the journey consists of a series of tests, allies, and enemies. This is the journey through the labyrinth of the unconscious. We are confronted with trials that test our courage, our wit, and our integrity. We meet figures who help us, perhaps a positive anima or animus figure who acts as a partner, or a helpful animal guide. We also meet those who hinder us, monsters that block our path, or trickster figures who try to lead us astray. And all of this leads to the central, life or death crisis of the journey, the ordeal. This is the hero's descent into the innermost cave, the dark heart of the matter, where they must confront their greatest fear. This is the moment of slaying the dragon. The dragon is one of the most powerful archetypal symbols we have. It represents a massive, overwhelming, and primal force. In psychological terms, the dragon you must face is your own. It may be the most terrifying and powerful aspect of your shadow. It could be a crippling addiction, a deep-seated trauma, a massive inferiority complex, or a destructive family pattern that has been passed down for generations. The battle with the dragon is the ultimate confrontation with the core issue that initiated the journey. There is no better illustration of this inner drama than the ancient Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. The city of Athens is in a state of suffering. It is forced to sacrifice its children to the Minotaur, a monstrous creature, half man and half bull, who lives at the center of a great labyrinth in Crete. This is a perfect image of a psychological state where the conscious community, Athens, is being forced to sacrifice its vitality and potential, the youth, to a dark, devouring, unconscious complex, the Minotaur. The hero, Theseus, bravely volunteers to be one of the victims. Intending to slay the beast, he answers the call to adventure. The labyrinth he must enter is a masterful symbol for the twisting, confusing, dark passages of the unconscious. It is easy to get lost in such a place, but Theseus is not alone. He meets his mentor and ally in the form of Princess Ariadne. She is the anima figure, the soul image, who falls in love with the hero and provides him with the tools he needs for the journey. She gives him two things: a sword, representing the hero's strength, courage, and focused intent, and, most famously, a simple ball of thread. The thread is the key. It is his connection back to the conscious world, the lifeline that will allow him to navigate the depths without becoming permanently lost. Holding this thread, Theseus plunges into the labyrinth, finds the Minotaur at its center, and after a ferocious battle, slays the monster. He then follows the thread back out into the light, leading the other captives to freedom. He has not just saved himself, he has liberated his entire culture from the tyranny of this dark, unconscious power. This leads us to the final stages of the journey. After slaying the dragon, the hero must claim the reward. What is the treasure that Theseus wins? It is not gold or jewels. The treasure is psychological. It is freedom, self-knowledge, and the liberation of psychic energy. The energy that was once consumed by the monster, that was tied up in fear and repression, is now available to the hero and his community. When you successfully confront a deep fear or integrate a major part of your shadow, you are flooded with a new sense of vitality and power. That is the treasure. Finally, there is the return. The hero must bring this treasure back to the ordinary world and use it to enrich life. In psychological terms, the person who has successfully navigated a deep inner journey does not keep the wisdom for themselves. They return to their life changed. They are more whole, more compassionate, more courageous. They become a source of healing and wisdom for those around them. Their personal victory becomes a victory for the collective. This grand, epic story is not just ancient history. It is your story. Your life, with its challenges and crises, is a hero's journey. Your dreams are the dispatches from the front lines, telling you which stage of the journey you are in. Your dragons are your own unique fears and limitations, and the ultimate treasure you are seeking is your own wholeness. The psyche is always issuing the call to adventure. The only question is whether you will find the courage to say yes and begin the greatest quest of all. We have journeyed through the landscapes of the inner world. We have learned the language of symbols. We have met the archetypal figures that live within us. And we have traced the timeless pattern of the hero's journey. And now, we arrive at the most important question of all. Why? Why should we undertake this difficult and often perilous quest? Why face the shadow? Why dialogue with the anima or animus? Why confront our inner dragons? What is the ultimate purpose of all this work? The answer to this question is the central, organizing principle of Carl Jung's entire psychology. It is the destination and the driving force of the journey itself. The great work of a human life, according to Jung, is a process he called individuation. It is absolutely crucial to understand what individuation is and what it is not. In our modern culture, which often champions radical self-interest, it is easy to confuse individuation with individualism. Individualism is an ego-driven process. It is about asserting one's own desires, standing apart from the crowd, and strengthening the ego and the persona. Individuation is almost the exact opposite. Its goal is not to strengthen the ego, but to put the ego in its proper place, in service to a larger, more complete reality. Individuation is the process of becoming an individual, which literally means an undivided self. It is the lifelong journey of healing the painful splits within our own psyche, of becoming conscious of our disparate parts and integrating them into a functioning, harmonious whole. It is the process of withdrawing our projections from the world, of taking back ownership of our shadow, of building a conscious relationship with our inner soul image. It is, ultimately, the journey of becoming the specific, unique, and authentic human being you were born to be, rather than the person your family, your culture, or your own fearful ego has told you that you should be. The second great misconception is that individuation is a path to perfection. Our society is obsessed with the idea of perfection, the flawless body, the endlessly positive mindset, the life without pain or error. Jung saw this pursuit of perfection as a dangerous neurosis, a recipe for a one-sided and therefore unbalanced life. The goal of individuation is not to be perfect, it is to be whole. A whole person is not someone who has eliminated their flaws or vanquished their darkness. A whole person is someone who has embraced the totality of their being. They have accepted their light and their shadow, their virtues and their vices, their joy and their sorrow. They have stopped trying to be only good and have found the courage to be real. As Jung famously and radically declared, "I would rather be whole than good." Wholeness includes the bad, the imperfect, the messy, the broken parts. It is about holding the tension of the opposites within yourself, and in doing so, becoming a complete human being. On this profound journey, our dreams are the most reliable tool we have. They are the compass, the sextant, and the map for the process of individuation. The psyche has a natural, inborn drive toward wholeness, and our dreams are the voice of that drive. They are the nightly reports from the self-regulating center of our being, constantly showing us where we have become unbalanced. If our conscious life becomes too rational, our dreams will bring us potent emotion. If we become too inflated and arrogant, our dreams will bring us humbling experiences of failure. When we are ignoring our shadow, our dreams will send it chasing after us. When we are ready to develop a new aspect of our personality, our dreams will present us with a guide or a new, intriguing symbol. Dreams are the relentless, compassionate, and utterly honest voice of the individuation impulse, always pointing the way toward the next step in our own unique evolution. This process, as strange as it might sound, is entirely natural. Think of an acorn. Within that small, humble seed, the entire blueprint of a mighty oak tree is already contained. The acorn does not need to be taught how to become an oak. It doesn't need to strive or force it. Given the right conditions, fertile soil, water, and sunlight, it will naturally, spontaneously, and inevitably grow into the fullness of its own being. Jung believed the human psyche operates on the same principle. Each of us is born as a psychic acorn, containing a unique, innate blueprint for our own personal wholeness. Individuation is this natural, teleological process of unfolding into the person we were always meant to be. The inner work we do, the dream analysis, the active imagination, the shadow work, is the equivalent of tending the soil. We are removing the rocks of our past traumas, pulling the weeds of our limiting beliefs, and providing the water and sunlight of conscious, loving attention, so that our own inner oak tree can grow strong, deep, and true to its own singular nature. Perhaps the most beautiful and complete metaphor for the process of individuation comes from the ancient and mysterious art of alchemy. On the surface, the alchemists were trying to turn base metals like lead into pure gold. But Jung recognized that this physical process was a projection, a symbolic description of a profound psychological transformation. The alchemical stages are a perfect map of the individuation journey. It begins with the prima materia, the first matter. This is the base lead, representing the ordinary, unconscious, undifferentiated psyche. It is our raw, unexamined self, heavy with conflict, projections, and the leaden weight of our unlived potential. The first great stage of the work is the nigredo, the blackening, The lead is sealed in a vessel and cooked over a fire until it breaks down, putrefie, and dissolves into a uniform black mass. Psychologically, this is the painful but necessary descent into the unconscious. It is the confrontation with the shadow. It is often a period of depression, confusion, chaos, and despair. A dark night of the soul where our old ego identity dies, and we feel utterly lost. Out of this darkness, if the work is continued, comes the albedo, the whitening. Through a process of washing and purification, the black matter is transformed into a shining, silver-white substance, likened to the full moon. Psychologically, this represents the dawning of a new light. It is the work of integrating the anima and animus, of building a conscious relationship with our inner soul. It is a stage of reflection, insight, and growing awareness. A new clarity emerging from the chaos. The final, climactic stage is the rubedo, the reddening. The white substance is reunited with the red spirit or soul, and through a final heating, it is transformed into the philosopher's stone, or pure, incorruptible gold. This is the grand union of opposites, the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine and the feminine, the earthly and the divine, the dark and the light. Psychologically, this symbolizes the achievement of the individuated state, the lead of the ordinary. Conflicted ego has been transformed into the gold of the integrated whole self. This is the great work. Individuation is not a task to be completed in a weekend seminar. It is not a final destination. It is the labor of a lifetime. A continuous, spiraling process of breaking down and building up, of descending into the darkness and returning with new light. It is the ultimate meaning of a human life to collaborate with the forces of our own soul to become the unique, undivided, and whole person we were always destined to be. And at the center of this entire alchemical process, acting as both the guide and the ultimate goal, is the most important archetype of all, the self. We have journeyed to the deepest foundations of the psyche, navigated the labyrinth of the unconscious, and stood before the great archetypal powers that shape our existence. We have followed the hero on his quest and witnessed the alchemical transformation of the soul. And now, we arrive at the very center, the ultimate destination and the guiding intelligence behind the entire journey. We come to the archetype that represents the totality of our being, the sun around which our entire psychic solar system revolves. This is the archetype of wholeness itself. The single most important and most mysterious concept in all of Jung's work, the self. The first and most vital thing to understand is that the self is not the ego. This is the single most important distinction in all of depth psychology. Our ego is the center of our conscious world. It is our sense of I, the executive function of our personality, the part of us that makes plans, sets goals, and navigates the demands of daily reality. The ego is essential. It is the captain of our ship, standing on the bridge, steering through the choppy waters of life. But the captain, no matter how competent, is not the whole ship. The self, in contrast, is the center of the total psyche, the totality of both our conscious awareness and the vast, boundless ocean of the unconscious. If the ego is the captain, the self is the invisible architect who designed the ship, the silent owner who holds its title, and the mysterious magnetic pull toward which the ship is ultimately sailing. The journey of individuation is, in essence, our own personal Copernican revolution. For most of our lives, we operate from an egocentric model of the universe. We believe our conscious I, our ego, is the center of our being. The great, humbling, and ultimately liberating discovery of the inner journey is the realization that this is an illusion. We discover that our small, fragile ego is not the center, but is in fact a small planet revolving around a much larger, more powerful, and more luminous central sun. That sun is the self. This shift in perspective, from egocentricity to self-centricity, is the goal of all deep spiritual and psychological work. It is the process of dethroning the ego from its position as absolute monarch and reinstating it in its rightful role as the faithful servant and worldly representative of the true king. The self. Because the self represents the union of all opposites, conscious and unconscious, light and dark, masculine and feminine, it rarely appears in our dreams as a simple human figure. Instead, it manifests through universal symbols of totality, transcendence, order, and divinity. The most common and important of these symbols is the mandala. The word means sacred circle in Sanskrit. Mandalas are typically circular designs, often containing a square or a four-pointed structure within them. The circle is a timeless symbol of eternity, divinity, and undivided wholeness. The square, or the quaternity, represents the earth, matter, and the fourfold structure of consciousness. The mandala is therefore a symbolic map of the cosmos, a visual representation of the union of heaven and earth, spirit and matter, all held together in a perfectly ordered, harmonious whole. Other symbols of the self frequently appear in dreams. They can take the form of a precious stone, like a diamond or a crystal. These objects are beautiful, often symmetrical, and virtually indestructible, representing the timeless and incorruptible nature of our central core. The self can also appear as a divine child, a magical or royal baby. This potent symbol represents the birth of a new, whole consciousness within us. It is the future, the promise of our own realized potential, combining the vulnerability of a newborn with the power of a god. Finally, the self may appear as a supreme authority figure, a king or a queen, a god or a goddess. To encounter such a majestic, ruling figure in a dream is to have an audience with the sovereign organizing principle of your own soul. The spontaneous creation of mandalas is a phenomenon that spans across all human cultures and times. A testament to the universal human instinct to give form to this inner experience of wholeness. We see it in the magnificent rose windows of the great Gothic cathedrals, with Christ or Mary at the center, the entire sacred story unfolding within a perfect circle. We see it in the healing sand paintings of the Navajo people, who create a sacred, ordered space to bring a patient back into harmony with the cosmos. Perhaps most famously, we see it in the sand mandalas of Tibetan Buddhist monks. They spend days or even weeks in intense concentration, painstakingly creating intricate cosmic diagrams from grains of colored sand. And when the beautiful, complex work is complete, they perform a final, profound ritual. They wipe it all away, sweeping the sand into an urn to be poured into a nearby river. This act is a powerful teaching. It demonstrates that the true self is not the outer form, which is always impermanent. The true self is the inner organizing principle, the divine blueprint that can create order and beauty out of the chaos of the world again and again. Jung himself discovered this during a period of intense personal crisis, when he began to spontaneously draw a new mandala in his notebook every morning. He found that each drawing was a kind of snapshot of his inner life at that moment, and that the act of creating them was the psyche's own natural attempt to find order, to heal itself, to re-establish its own center. The ultimate goal, then, is to establish a conscious, working connection between the ego and the self. This connection is often called the ego-self axis. When this axis is broken, a person either falls into despair and meaninglessness, feeling alienated from their own life's purpose, or they become inflated, their ego mistakenly identifying with the power of the self, leading to arrogance and megalomania. But when the ego-self axis is strong, a new way of living emerges. The ego learns to listen. It pays attention to the whispers and directives from the inner center, which communicate through dreams, intuition, and meaningful coincidences, the ego's job is no longer to force its own will upon the world, but to use its skills and its connection to reality to manifest the deeper will of the self. It becomes a life lived in a state of continuous dialogue with one's own soul. For Jung, this was more than just psychology. The empirical discovery of the self as an active, guiding force within the psyche was the discovery of the imago Dei, the image of God, within every human being. An encounter with the self, whether in a powerful dream or a profound spiritual experience, is transformative. It brings a lasting sense of peace, a deep sense of meaning, and an unshakable feeling of being connected to a larger, benevolent order. It is the feeling of finally coming home to yourself. It is the discovery that the source of meaning and divinity you may have been searching for in the outer world has been residing within you all along. And when this sacred inner connection is made, a strange and wonderful thing begins to happen. The outer world often starts to rearrange itself in ways that mysteriously mirror this newfound inner order. A phenomenon of meaningful coincidence that Jung gave a special name, synchronicity. As we establish a conscious and respectful relationship with the great archetypal powers of the inner world, and as we learn to align our ego with the guidance of the self, a strange, mysterious, and wonderful phenomenon begins to occur. The rigid boundary we once perceived between our inner world of thoughts and dreams and the outer world of reality begins to soften. To become porous, we start to experience moments that defy all logical explanation. Moments of breathtaking coincidence that feel less like chance and more like a secret, meaningful whisper from the universe itself. You might think of a friend you haven't spoken to in a decade, and 5 minutes later, your phone rings with their name on the screen. You might be wrestling with a specific problem, symbolized in a dream by a spider, and the next day, you encounter spiders in 3 different, unusual contexts. These are not just random quirks of probability. They are evidence of a deep and mysterious principle at work. A principle that Carl Jung gave a name to: synchronicity. Our modern scientific worldview is built almost entirely on the rock-solid foundation of causality. Event A causes event B. A billiard ball strikes another, causing it to move. A virus enters the body, causing an illness. The world, we are taught, is a great, intricate machine of cause and effect. Jung's concept of synchronicity was revolutionary because he proposed a second, complementary principle of connection, and a causal connecting principle. He suggested that some events are linked not by a chain of cause and effect, but by a shared meaning. In a synchronistic event, the inner event, the thought, the dream, the feeling does not cause the outer event. Your thought did not magically force your friend to pick up the phone. Rather, the 2 independent events, one in the mind and one in the world, occur at the same time in a way that is so profoundly meaningful to the person experiencing them that the connection feels undeniable. It is the universe winking at you. It is a moment where the inner and outer worlds rhyme. The foundational story of this principle, the event that gave Jung the final, empirical proof he needed, is a beautiful example of this mystery in action. He was treating a young woman who was exceptionally intelligent and grounded in a fiercely rational data, Cartesian worldview. Her intellectualism was so rigid that it had become a defense, a fortress that prevented her from making any real therapeutic progress. Her psyche was stuck. One day, she came to her session and told Jung about a powerful dream from the previous night. In the dream, she had been given a piece of exquisite jewelry in the shape of a golden scarab beetle. As she was in the middle of describing this dream, Jung heard a soft, persistent tapping sound at the window behind his chair. He turned and saw a flying insect knocking against the outer pane. He opened the window, caught the creature as it flew in, and closed his hand around it. Without looking at it, he walked back to his patient and held out his closed fist. "Here," he said, "is your scarab." He opened his hand, In his palm was a common rose chafer beetle, an insect whose golden-green metallic sheen makes it the closest possible European analogy to a golden scarab. The effect on his patient was instantaneous and profound. The sheer, baffling impossibility of the event shattered her rigid rationalism. It broke through her intellectual armor in a way that no amount of talk therapy ever could. This single, meaningful coincidence opened her up to the reality of the irrational, the mysterious. And from that moment on, her analysis began to move forward with incredible speed. So how can such a thing be possible? How can the inner world of dreams and the outer world of physical reality suddenly align in such a perfect, meaningful way? Jung's hypothesis was as daring as the principle itself. He suggested that psyche and matter are not two fundamentally separate things, but are rather two different aspects of one single, underlying reality, which he called the unus mundus, or one world. He believed that synchronicity tends to happen when an archetype from the collective unconscious is powerfully activated or constellated. In an individual's psyche, when an archetype is charged with so much energy, it can create a kind of resonance, a vibration that transcends the boundary between mind and matter. It is as if the intense meaning inside the psyche can arrange the physical world around it to reflect that same meaning. In the case of his patient, the ancient Egyptian symbol of the scarab beetle is a powerful archetype of death and rebirth, of transformation. This archetype was becoming intensely active in her psyche, signaling a necessary transformation. The energy was so great that it manifested outwardly, drawing a real, physical scarab into that exact moment to deliver the message in an undeniable form. This is the psychological framework for what many people today call receiving signs from the universe. Synchronicity is not something you can force or control with your ego. That would be causality. But you can learn to recognize it and honor its meaning. These events often cluster around significant moments in our lives when we are grappling with a major decision, when we are deep in a creative process, or after a particularly powerful big dream. When the archetypes are active, the world becomes a mirror. You dream of a lion, and the next day you see a company truck with a lion logo. You hear a song with the word lion in it, and you see a documentary about lions on television. The universe is not simply being random. The self, the organizing principle of your being, is using the canvas of the outer world to amplify and confirm an inner message. It is a wink from your own soul, reassuring you that you are on the right path, or urging you to pay closer attention. You cannot make synchronicity happen, but you can create the inner conditions that make it more likely. The first is simply to pay attention. Live with a symbolic awareness. When strange coincidences occur, I don't just dismiss them as meaningless chance. Hold them in your mind. Ask yourself, what was I just thinking about? What is happening in my life right now that could give this event meaning? The second is to continue your inner work. The more you engage with your dreams and your unconscious, the more you stir the archetypal depths, and the more likely it is that this inner activity will resonate in the outer world. Finally, it requires a sense of humility, an acknowledgement that our rational ego is not the master of the universe and that we live within a mysterious, intelligent cosmos that we do not fully understand. To experience synchronicity is to be given a profound gift. It is a momentary glimpse into the hidden order of reality, a direct experience that you are not an isolated being in a dead, mechanical world, but are a vital and meaningful participant in a living, breathing, and deeply interconnected cosmos. It is the universe leaning in to let you know that it sees you, and that the conversation you are having with your own soul is part of a much grander dialogue. We have now traveled through the grand, and at times abstract, landscapes of the psyche. We have spoken of archetypes, of individuation, of the very fabric of reality shimmering with synchronicity. But now, we must bring this profound journey down to earth, into your life, into your hands, starting tonight. The great question arises, how does one actually begin this work? The answer is not found in a complex ritual or an expensive seminar. It begins with the simplest and yet most powerful of tools, a blank notebook and a pen. We are going to talk about the foundational, non-negotiable practice of keeping a dream journal. This is not a mere diary for recording fantasies. A dream journal is a sacred text, your personal book of symbols, the laboratory notebook for your own inner alchemy. It is the single most important practical step you can take to begin a conscious relationship with your soul. First, we must understand why this simple act is so critical. Dreams are the most delicate and evanescent of psychic products. They are like snowflakes. The moment they touch the warm hand of conscious awareness, they begin to melt. They are like messages written in smoke, vanishing into the air as the logic of the coming day asserts itself. How many times have you woken from a vivid, meaningful dream, convinced you would remember it, only to have it completely gone? Save for a faint wisp of feeling. Just minutes later, the conscious mind, with its schedules, its worries, and its relentless focus on the outer world, is a harsh environment for the subtle images of the night. The only way to honor them, to preserve them, is to catch them immediately in the net of the written word. Furthermore, the physical act of writing is a profound ritual of connection. It is a bridge between worlds. Your hand, a part of your physical body, guided by your conscious will, moves across the page to give form to the messages of the deep unconscious. It is a psychophysical act that tells your inner world, in the clearest possible terms, I am listening. What you have to say matters to me. I value your wisdom. This simple declaration of intent is incredibly powerful. The psyche, feeling heard and valued, will often respond by sending more dreams, and with greater clarity. Finally, relying on memory alone is a fool's errand. Our ego is a notorious editor. It forgets what it finds uncomfortable. It smooths over what it finds illogical, and it reshapes narratives to fit its own preferred story. The written record is different. It is an objective account. It is raw data from the soul. Weeks, months, or even years later, you can return to your journal and discover patterns, recurring symbols, and astonishing connections that your conscious memory would have completely erased. So, how does one begin this practice? The mechanics are simple, but they require discipline. First, acquire the tools, a dedicated notebook, and a pen that you enjoy writing with. This notebook should be reserved only for your dreams. Place it, and the pen, directly beside your bed, within easy arm's reach. The small friction of having to get up to find something to write with is often enough to shatter the dream state and lose the memory forever. Before you go to sleep, perform a small ritual of intent. Hold your journal for a moment. Silently, or out loud, say to yourself, "Tonight, I will remember my dreams. I am open to the messages from my soul." This simple act primes the mind and sets the stage. The most crucial moment of the entire process is the instant of waking, when your eyes first open. Do not move. Do not roll over. Do not immediately think about your to-do list for the day. And above all, do not look at your phone. The dream memory is often tied to your physical state. Lie still, in the exact position you woke up in, and let your mind drift back into the hazy borderland between sleeping and waking. Often, the fragments of the dream will begin to float back to you as soon as you have a thread of it, no matter how small. Reach for your journal and begin to write. Do not judge what comes out. Do not worry about spelling, grammar, or if it makes any sense. The goal is to capture, not to edit. It is helpful to write in the present tense. I am walking through a forest. A strange man is giving me a key, as this helps you re-immerse yourself in the dream's atmosphere. When you record the dream, be sure to include several key elements. Always write the date. This is essential for tracking your progress and seeing how your dreams correlate with life events. Give the dream a short, memorable title, like The Flying Fish or The Test I Never Studied For. This will help you find it later. Then, write down the narrative itself, the plot of the dream, as best you can remember it. But do not stop there. The feelings are just as important, if not more so. How did you feel in the dream? Frightened, joyful, confused, peaceful. And how did you feel immediately upon waking? The emotion is the energy that animates the dream's symbols. Note the details, specific colors that stood out, sounds, textures, the overall atmosphere, and if a particularly strange or potent symbol appeared, try to draw it. You do not need to be an artist. A simple sketch of a strange key or a geometric pattern can capture its essence far better than words can. Lastly, it is incredibly helpful to make a brief day note. A sentence or two about the significant events or main worries of the day before the dream. This will help you see the direct connections between your waking life and your inner world. The long-term value of this practice cannot be overstated. Let us imagine a woman, we'll call her Sarah, who feels uninspired and stuck in her career. She decides to start a dream journal. For the first few weeks, all she captures are bizarre fragments that make little sense. But she persists. Every morning, she writes something down. After 3 months, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, she decides to read her journal from the very beginning. As she reads, a pattern begins to emerge from the chaos. A pattern she never would have seen day to day. She notices that about a week before every single time a new positive opportunity arose at work, a new project, a compliment from her boss, a creative breakthrough, she had a dream that featured a kind, unknown man who was wearing bright blue shoes. In each of these dreams, the man would silently hand her a strange, antiquated tool she didn't recognize. The connection was undeniable. This figure wasn't random. He was a messenger, a positive animus figure, her own inner guide, signaling that a creative opportunity was on its way. The journal had become her personal Rosetta Stone, allowing her to decipher the unique language of her own soul. The next time she dreams of the man with the blue shoes, she is not confused. She is ready. Your dream journal is the most important book you will ever own, because it is the one you are writing in collaboration with your own soul. It is the sacred text of your own individuation journey. It is the empirical evidence that you are engaged in the great work. Starting this practice tonight is the most powerful and concrete step you can take on this path. It is a simple, humble act of devotion that says to the vast, wise, and mysterious universe within you, I am ready. Speak. I am listening. And as we learn to listen more deeply, we may find that some messages are too complex, too frightening, or too profound to decipher on our own. And this raises the important question of when we might need to seek a human guide to help us navigate these deep waters. The journey into the depths of one's own psyche is the most personal and intimate quest a human being can undertake. The tools we have discussed, understanding the archetypes, keeping a dream journal, practicing active imagination, are powerful companions for the solitary traveler. For much of the journey, these tools are enough. We can navigate the familiar landscapes, explore the foothills of our own being, and gain immense wisdom from our own dedicated efforts. However, the inner world is a vast and wild territory. It contains not only sunlit meadows and gentle streams, but also treacherous mountain ranges, dense, disorienting forests, and formidable dragons. There are times on this journey when we may find ourselves hopelessly lost, circling the same dark woods, or standing before a chasm so wide that we dare not cross it alone. It is in these moments that the ultimate wisdom lies, not in pushing forward stubbornly, but in recognizing the need for a guide, This is the role of the Jungian analyst, an experienced human companion for the most challenging parts of the soul's great expedition. It is vital to begin by dismantling a common misconception. A Jungian analyst is not a dream expert who will tell you what your dreams mean. If you go to an analyst and they say, "You dreamed of a snake," that means this. Or, "This dream means you should quit your job. You should walk away immediately." To give a definitive interpretation is to disrespect the unique, sovereign reality of the dreamer's psyche. The analyst's role is not that of a guru who dispenses answers, but that of a psychic midwife. The person in analysis is the one giving birth to a new consciousness, a new awareness. The analyst is the one who has attended many such births before. They know the stages of labor. They recognize the signs of distress. They can offer techniques to manage the pain. And they can provide a safe and supportive environment for the birth to occur. But they cannot have the baby for you. Their purpose is to help you deliver your own meaning, to give birth to your own truth. They are a co-explorer, a partner in a deep, collaborative dialogue with your soul. So when might one seek out such a guide? There are several key situations where entering analysis can be a life-altering decision. The first is the experience of recurring, terrifying nightmares. A nightmare is not just a bad dream. It is a scream from a part of the psyche that is in profound distress. When the same nightmare repeats, it is a sign that the unconscious is urgently trying to communicate a critical message that the conscious mind is failing or refusing to hear. It is like a fire alarm that will not stop ringing. An analyst can help you find the courage to face the fire and understand its source. The second situation is a feeling of psychic stagnation. This is when you may be doing the work on your own, journaling, reading, reflecting, but you feel stuck, going around in circles, encountering the same self-sabotaging patterns again and again without making any progress. This often indicates the presence of a powerful, deeply rooted complex that is too strong for your ego to handle on its own. It requires the objective perspective of another to help untie that psychic knot. Finally, analysis is often sought during major life crises and transitions. The classic example is the midlife crisis, when the goals and ambitions that drove the first half of life suddenly feel empty and meaningless, and deep questions about purpose and legacy rise to the surface. But it can also be during any great upheaval, a divorce, the death of a loved one, a major career change, or a serious illness. During these times, the foundations of our identity are shaken. The unconscious is highly activated, and the potential for both profound breakdown and profound breakthrough is immense. An analyst can provide a safe harbor, a containing vessel in which to navigate the storm and find a new shore. The relationship between a person and their analyst can be best understood through the metaphor of mountain climbing. Your self-guided inner work is like hiking in the local hills. You can learn the trails, you can build your strength, you can read a map, and you can enjoy the beauty and the challenge on your own terms. It is a deeply rewarding and essential practice. But confronting a deep-seated trauma, a crippling addiction, or a profound spiritual crisis is not like hiking in the hills. It is like attempting to climb Mount Everest. This is a different order of reality. The terrain is treacherous and unknown. The weather can change in an instant, with sudden emotional storms that can be completely disorienting. The air is thin, making it difficult to get perspective. To attempt such a climb alone is not a sign of bravery, it is a sign of hubris. The Jungian analyst is the experienced Sherpa guide. The Sherpa does not carry you up the mountain. You must still take every step yourself. You must do the hard work of acclimatizing, of putting one foot in front of the other. But the Sherpa's wisdom is indispensable. They know the mountain intimately. They know the safest routes and the hidden crevasses. They can read the subtle signs in the clouds that warn of an approaching storm. They carry the right equipment, the theoretical knowledge and clinical experience to handle emergencies. And they offer calm, steady encouragement when you feel you cannot possibly go on. Choosing to work with a guide for the Everests of your psyche is a sign of profound wisdom and a deep respect for the power of the inner world. The analytic process itself takes place within a safe, confidential, and reliable space, what is called a temenos, or an alchemical vessel. Within this container, a dialogue unfolds. You bring your dreams, your life experiences, your fears, your hopes. The analyst listens with a special kind of attention, an ear tuned to the symbolic and the archetypal. They help you amplify your dream images, connecting them to the great myths and stories of humankind, showing you that your personal struggle is part of a timeless human drama. They hold up a mirror, allowing you to see your own unconscious patterns, your projections, your complexes. In a way, your own ego never could. It is in the safety of this trusted relationship that the deepest healing and most profound transformations can occur. The decision to enter analysis is not an admission of weakness or failure. It is an act of profound strength, courage, and commitment to your own journey of becoming whole. It is an acknowledgement that this sacred work sometimes requires more than a solitary spirit. It requires the guiding hand of one who has walked the path before and knows the way home. This ability to see our own life as a great story can be expanded even further, beyond our nightly visions, to the myths that we unknowingly live out in our waking days. As we become more adept at understanding the narratives of our nightly dreams, we begin to realize that the psyche's storytelling doesn't stop when we wake up. We are, in fact, living inside a story every single moment of our lives. We each have what Jung called a personal myth, an unconscious, guiding narrative that shapes our choices, our relationships, our beliefs, and our destiny. This personal myth is the master script we are unknowingly acting out on the stage of our lives. To become conscious of this script is to be handed the pen, to move from being a mere actor in a story written by our past to becoming the conscious author of our future. To learn how to read these life stories, we can first practice on the great collective stories of humanity, the myths and fairy tales that have endured for centuries, precisely because they are such perfect maps of the human soul. Myths are not primitive, failed attempts at science. They are the collective dreams of a culture. They are the psyche of a people, writ large, expressing its deepest fears, its highest aspirations, and its most fundamental psychological truths. Fairy tales, in particular, are like the unvarnished, potent dreams of the collective. They are simple, direct, and they deal with the core dramas of psychic life, the struggle against a tyrannical inner critic, the journey to find one's true partner, the transformation from a state of neglect to one of recognized worth. By learning to interpret these tales, we learn to recognize the same patterns in ourselves. Let us take one of the most beloved fairy tales of all, Cinderella, and look at it not as a children's story, but as a profound psychological allegory for the journey of the soul. Cinderella herself represents the true self, or the part of the ego that is connected to it. Her name, Cinderella, tells us she lives amongst the cinders, the ashes. This represents a state of psychological depression, neglect, and a disconnection from one's own inner fire and worth. Her true value is unrecognized by her immediate environment. That environment is personified by the wicked stepmother and stepsisters. They are a perfect symbol for what Jung would call a negative mother complex, or more broadly, a hostile and oppressive inner critic. They are the internal voices that tell us we are dirty, we are worthless, we are not good enough to attend the royal ball, that our place is in the ashes. They are the forces of the shadow, or tyrannical persona, that work to keep our true self hidden and demeaned. When Cinderella weeps, having reached the end of her own ego resources, a magical helper appears, the fairy godmother. She is a classic manifestation of the wise old woman archetype, a messenger from the deep unconscious. And notice what she does. She doesn't just conjure a dress out of thin air. She transforms the humble, Everyday things from Cinderella's world, a pumpkin becomes a golden carriage. Mice become horses. A lizard becomes a footman. The psychological truth here is profound. The resources for our own transformation are not found in some distant, magical realm. They are hidden in the humble, ordinary, and often overlooked aspects of our own lives. It is our change in perspective, our magic, that reveals their true potential. The royal ball is a symbol for a sacred space, a chance for the neglected soul to enter into the presence of the central organizing principle of the psyche, the self, which is here represented by the prince. It is an opportunity for our true nature to be seen and validated. And the means of this recognition is the glass slipper. The slipper is not just any shoe, it is unique, magical, and it fits only one person in the entire kingdom. The slipper symbolizes our unique essence, our singular, individual nature. The prince is not looking for just any pretty girl. He is looking for the one and only soul that perfectly corresponds to this unique measure. When he finds her, it represents the union of the ego with the self, a state of wholeness, recognition, and psychic royalty. The story of Cinderella is a timeless myth about the journey of reclaiming our innate worth from the oppressive forces of our inner critic and achieving a sacred marriage with our own deepest, truest self. Now, turn the lens of the mythologist upon your own life. What is your personal myth? What is the unconscious story you have been living? If your life were a book, what would its title be? What role do you find yourself playing over and over again? Many of us are unknowingly living out ancient scripts. Perhaps you are living the myth of Sisyphus, condemned to forever push a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down. In life, this feels like, I must always struggle. I work endlessly, but my tasks are never truly finished. I can never rest. Perhaps you are living the myth of the eternal victim, where you feel that life is a series of unfortunate events that happen to you, leaving you powerless. Or maybe you are the rescuer, a person whose script dictates that you must always be saving others, often at the expense of your own energy and well-being. Or the rebel, who must always define themselves by fighting against an authority figure, unable to find peace without an enemy. You can identify your personal myth by looking for the recurring patterns in your life. Look at your relationships, your career choices, your financial habits, your greatest triumphs, and your most painful failures. What is the common thread? What story do these events tell? The first step to freedom is to simply recognize the script. The moment you can consciously say, "Ah, I see. I have been living the Sisyphus myth." You are no longer the unconscious actor. You have become the audience. You are watching the play. And this shift from identification to observation drains the myth of its compulsive power. Once you have made the myth conscious, you can begin to question it. Is this story still serving me? Does it lead to growth, wholeness, and life? Or does it lead to stagnation and suffering? If the answer is the latter, you can begin the sacred and creative work of writing a new one. This is not about simplistic positive thinking. It is about making new, conscious choices that are aligned with a new, more life-affirming story. The person living the victim myth can consciously choose to take one small area of their life and exercise their own agency, no matter how small. The person living the rescuer myth can consciously choose to say no and practice healthy self-care. It is the act of stepping off the stage of the old story and refusing to say the old lines. This is the ultimate creative freedom, to realize that you are not just a character in a story, but that you are also its author. By consciously understanding and reshaping our personal myths, we infuse our lives with meaning and purpose, transforming a series of random events into a coherent, soulful, and heroic journey of our own making. We have journeyed together through the vast and often bewildering territory of the Jungian landscape. We have descended into the personal and collective unconscious. We have met the archetypes, walked the hero's path, and glimpsed the luminous, ordering power of the self. To complete our exploration, we must now take a step back, return to the bright light of the 21st century, and look upon this body of work with a modern, critical eye, any system of thought as profound, ambitious, and revolutionary as Jung's will inevitably attract its share of criticism and skepticism. To honestly engage with these critiques is not to diminish Jung's legacy, but to understand it more fully and to locate its true, enduring, and desperately needed wisdom for our time. The most common and forceful criticisms of Jungian psychology come from the world of strict empirical science. From this perspective, Jung's key concepts are problematic. How? A neuroscientist might ask, can you prove the existence of a collective unconscious? You cannot locate it in the brain. How can you measure an archetype? It cannot be quantified or subjected to controlled, double-blind studies. Concepts like synchronicity are often dismissed as mere confirmation bias, the human brain's tendency to see patterns in random noise. From a purely materialistic standpoint, Jung's work can be seen as unscientific, hopelessly vague, and more akin to mysticism and religion than to a rigorous psychological discipline. He is accused of abandoning science for spirituality, of creating a system that relies on faith rather than fact. To understand the value of Jung's work, we must first understand that his critics are, in a sense, absolutely right. But they are asking the wrong questions. Imagine a dialogue between two brilliant minds. One is a neuroscientist who believes truth is only what can be measured, and the other is a Jungian analyst who believes truth is what can be experienced and lived. The scientist might say, "You cannot show me an archetype on an fMRI scan. Therefore, it is not real." The analyst might reply, "I cannot show you love or despair or hope on a scan either." Does that make them any less real? The proof of the archetype is not in its substance, but in its effect. When a man's life has been crippled for decades by a destructive pattern of relationships, and through understanding the terrible mother archetype at work within him, he is finally able to break free and form a healthy partnership that is the proof. The proof is the transformation. The proof is the healing. The scientist might counter, synchronicity is just a coincidence that your pattern-seeking brain imbues with false meaning. The analyst would respond, perhaps, but when that coincidence is the very event that stops a person from taking their own life, or the very message that confirms a life-altering creative path. To dismiss the meaning of the event is to dismiss the most important piece of data. We are simply studying different kinds of truth. You are studying the mechanics of the brain. I am studying the experience of the soul. Jungian psychology is not, and never intended to be, a natural science like physics or chemistry. Its goal is not to predict and control the outer world. It is a phenomenological and hermeneutic discipline, a science of the soul whose purpose is to interpret and understand the world of subjective human experience. Its proof lies not in statistical averages, but in the crucible of individual lives. Does this framework help people who are suffering? Does it bring meaning to those who feel lost? Does it help people become more whole, more creative, and more fully themselves? For millions of people over the past century, the answer has been a resounding and life-changing yes. Jung did not present his concepts as dogma, but as empirical findings based on his decades of courageous observation of the psyche in all its light and darkness. He offered not a creed, but a map that each individual must verify through their own exploration. And from our vantage point in the 21st century, this map is more relevant and more necessary than ever before. We live in an age of profound disconnection. We are disconnected from the natural world, from our communities, from our own bodies, and most tragically, from our own inner lives. We distract ourselves with endless streams of information and entertainment. We carefully curate our digital personas on social media, and we find ourselves in a state of chronic, low-grade anxiety and meaninglessness. Jung's entire body of work is a powerful antidote to this modern malady. It is a call to turn inward, to do the courageous work of self-knowledge, to discover that a universe of meaning exists within our own soul. In an age of shallow materialism that tells us happiness is one more purchase away, Jung reminds us that meaning is the only thing that can truly sustain us. And that meaning is an inside job. In an age where the decline of traditional religion has left a vast spiritual vacuum, Jung offers a path that does not require fealty to an external institution, but instead encourages a direct, personal, and authentic experience of the divine within. The archetype of the self, the influence of these ideas has been so profound that they have silently seeped into the very water of our culture, especially within modern spirituality and self-help movements. The popular concept of shadow work is taken directly from Jung. Joseph Campbell's empowering mantra to follow your bliss was born from his deep study of Jung's work on myth and individuation. Even a phenomenon like the law of attraction can be seen as a simplified and often ego-driven interpretation of Jung's principle of synchronicity. The idea that one's inner state has an effect on outer reality is central to both. The crucial difference is that for Jung, this was not a magic trick for the ego to get a bigger house or a better parking space. It was a sign that the deeper will of the self was aligning with the cosmos, a confirmation of one's true path, which might be difficult and humbling, not just gratifying. To understand the Jungian roots of these popular ideas is to give them a depth, a safety, and an integrity they might otherwise lack. In the final analysis, Jung's enduring legacy is not that he provided a set of easy answers. He did the opposite. He provided a set of profound, life-altering questions and a method for discovering our own unique answers. He looked at the chaos of the human soul, its bizarre dreams, its terrifying neuroses, its dark myths, its irrational passions, and he did not see pathology to be eliminated. He saw a purposeful, intelligent, and deeply meaningful system, striving for balance and wholeness. He taught us that the greatest adventure we can ever take is not to travel to the farthest star, but to journey into the depths of our own being. He gave us a language to speak with our soul, and the courage to listen to its reply. He gave us the great work of our lives, the sacred, difficult, and joyous task of becoming who we truly are. We have now come to the end of our long journey together. A journey that has taken us from the familiar shores of the conscious mind to the deepest, most mysterious depths of the human soul. We began with a simple question about the meaning of a strange dream, and in seeking an answer, we descended through the floorboards of our own being. We entered the personal cellar and met the rejected, powerful figure of our shadow. We dove deeper still, into the vast, ancient ocean of the collective unconscious, and encountered the timeless archetypes that reside there, the guiding anima and animus, the wise mentors, and the inner dragons we must all face. We have walked the hero's path and witnessed the alchemical process of the soul's transformation, seeing how the lead of our suffering can be turned into the gold of our wholeness. And finally, we stood at the center of it all, before the luminous, ordering principle of the self, the divine spark that is both the guide and the goal of our entire existence. Now, as we return from this inner world, we carry back with us a single, essential truth, a treasure that underlies all of this profound work. The truth is this: the compass you seek is within you, the source of wisdom, the arbiter of meaning, and the ultimate authority on your own life is not to be found in any external book, teacher, or system. It resides within the deep intelligence of your own psyche. Your dreams are not a foreign language that requires a special expert to translate. They are your soul's native tongue, a nightly conversation it is trying to have with you. The goal is not to find the one correct interpretation of a dream, but to cultivate a correct relationship with your inner world, a relationship built on curiosity, humility, and a deep, abiding respect. For peace and prosperity are not destinations to be reached in the outer world, but are the natural results of cultivating harmony and wholeness in the world within. This exploration of the Jungian path was not meant as a mere intellectual exercise. It was a preparation, a map-reading session before you embark on your own great expedition. You are equipped now. You have the concepts, you have the tools, and you have the framework to understand that your life is not a series of random, meaningless events, but a coherent, sacred, and heroic story. You are not a passive dreamer, tossed about by the chaotic waves of the unconscious. You are an active explorer, a conscious collaborator in the work of your own becoming. So tonight, when you lay your head on your pillow, I invite you to do so with a new sense of reverence and anticipation. Understand that you are not simply shutting down for the night. You are stepping across the threshold into a sacred space, a laboratory for the soul, a temple of the spirit, the private workshop where your own future is being forged. Take the first, simple, practical step on this path. Place a notebook and a pen by your bed. As you drift into sleep, hold the quiet intention to remember, to listen, to honor the messages that arise from your own depths. The greatest adventure you will ever take is waiting for you behind your own closed eyes. The universe is whispering its secrets to you every single night. Your soul is calling you home to yourself. All you have to do is begin to listen.